Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order of Stillwater Area Public Schools, Independent School District 834. This is a school board business meeting, and the date is December 19th, 2019. Would the secretary please read the roll?
Chair Potachik.
Here.
Vice Chair Pearson.
Here.
Treasurer Weisberg. Clerk Stivland.
Here.
Director Burns.
Here.
Director Pelletier.
Here.
Director Riley.
Here.
You have a quorum?
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I believe we have distributed and will read the district mission statement.
Thank you. The mission of Stillwater Area Public Schools, in partnership with students, family, and community, is to develop curious individuals who are active and engaged leaders in an ever-changing world by challenging all students as they travel along their personalized learning pathways.
School board goals.
In partnership with community, parents, and students, the School Board of Stillwater Area Public Schools ensures excellence in education by increasing student achievement for all students, securing long-term financial stability of the district, increasing community trust and engagement.
Thank you both. As I mentioned last time, before the approval of the agenda, last time, or those of you who were in attendance or watched the meeting, we are trying to keep the meetings to 2 hours or less. That was our target last week. We went about a half an hour over that last time. We're going to try to do better tonight. And I will give out a few reminders along the way, but that's not to stifle discussion, but to meet our target. And I'm up for an approval of tonight's agenda.
So moved.
And Mark moved.
Would this be an
Director
appropriate?
Riley? Sure.
Would this be an appropriate time to ask for permission to move action item A following D, unless Director Weisberg comes sooner, then we can leave it at A?
Okay. A second?
I'll second that.
Okay, is that appropriate? Is everybody comfortable with that? Okay, all those in favor of the approval of the agenda as amended, please signify by raising your right hand and saying aye, please.
Aye.
And it was unanimous. Introductory items, and Mr. Bach, would you please come forward and introduce our guest of recognition?
Did we approve the agenda? Did we approve the
Oh, did
agenda?
we did approve the agenda. We had the superintendent report first usually, but it's
Oh,
not on
okay. Well, let me just take
That's
this and then we'll come. I'm sorry. Thank you. I did.
Thank you, Board Chair Potachik and members of the board. It is my distinct privilege and honor to introduce, she is, Maddie Whittington to you. Maddie is a senior this year at Stillwater Area High School. She's a senior volleyball player, all-conference volleyball player, all-state volleyball player, and recently was named by the Minnesota Volleyball Coaches Association as Miss Volleyball, which is the title that is bestowed upon the top player in the state of Minnesota. Maddie has helped lead a very successful high school volleyball program at Stillwater High School. During the course of her time with us, we've won numerous conference championships. We've been to the state tournament 2 separate times with Maddie, and Maddie has obviously been a key player in that. On top of all of her accomplishments on the court, I think maybe one of the most significant accomplishments is that Maddie overcame a serious setback 2 years ago when she suffered a pretty debilitating knee injury. She went down with what we call the triple crown in athletics. That's torn ACL, MCL, and meniscus cartilage. And And Maddie worked her way back, and the fact that she was able to literally miss an entire year of her high school career and come back to be the kind of impact player that she was as a junior and as a senior to be named the top player in the state is an awesome, awesome accomplishment. On top of that, another awesome accomplishment is that Maddie is going to be graduating early from us at Stillwater Area High School, so we're actually going to be saying goodbye, unfortunately, to Maddie relatively soon, as her last day of school with us is on January 10th, because she is a Division I player who's going to be attending the University of Illinois, Big Ten volleyball down in Champaign-Urbana. The Fighting Illini actually made it to the Final Four. Recently, they're a top 5 program in the country, and that's where Maddie's going to be going. And we learned how to play with the big girls and get her academics in line a little bit and start working out with the team so that she's ready to be an impact player for them. She's been an awesome addition to our school. It's just been great to see her, and I'm going to introduce her to you. As a former volleyball coach myself, it's just, again, it's really kind of a neat honor, even though I didn't get to coach her and say that it was my tutelage. It's just been awesome seeing her and having her in our building. And please welcome Maddie. Come on up.
Just want to say thank you so much for those kind words. And I also want to say, excuse me, thank you for having me here tonight. It means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to our program as well. I want to say thank you to the entire Stillwater community. If it weren't for the amazing support that I felt throughout the past 4 years, I would not have nearly been as successful as I was. If it weren't for my amazing teachers, coaches, facilities, and just all around love that I felt, like I said, it wouldn't have been nearly the career that I had. As a freshman, being new to the district, I felt an overwhelming amount of kindness that made my transition so easy. And every year, I was so impressed with the amount of love that I received. I'm so lucky to get the chance to continue my academic and athletic career at the University of Illinois, and I can confidently say that it would not be possible without the entire Stillwater family. Thank you.
Maddie, we're going to take questions in a minute.
Okay.
Can you give me a prediction on the Final Four? I think those games are played tonight, aren't they?
I believe so. I don't know. It's going to be a really good battle for both games.
Yeah, and I think it's actually Wisconsin against Baylor, and then Minnesota against Stanford.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Yes, it should be. Big Ten is a powerhouse. You know that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Other questions or comments?
I'll ask one. So you're going to be graduating early. What kind of challenges did you overcome in having, I'm sure, a very busy schedule with your volleyball and then trying to actually graduate early? How did you do that?
Well, it took a lot of time management.
Okay.
I owe a lot of that to my parents. They helped me a lot. They're actually over there. Hi. So, yeah, like I said, a lot of time management. Just a lot of stress relief, as well was important, so I'd go practice or workouts, and just relieve my stress, and I'd go back and, sit down and write out my homework schedule for the night or, what I had to do the next day, and that's how I did it.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Good. Denise?
Maddie, I had the great fortune of visiting with your parents for a minute before, and I know people in our community and the school board and others realize how important parents are to your success, bringing you to practices before you could drive, supporting you through your injuries, and I just want to give a shout out to them also because our parents help us and do some amazing things for our students, so congratulations to them also.
Congratulations, you made us all
Thank you.
very, very proud.
Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank
We'll look
back
for you
and
on
see us.
TV.
Sorry. Oh,
We'll watch for you on TV.
oh, thank you. Thank you guys so much again for having me.
Super. Thank you.
Great.
And next we're going It's a tough act to follow, but we're going to have the superintendent's report next.
Thank you. I'll keep it very brief. Thank you, Director Tasik. I just wanted to mention very quickly the English Language Arts secondary curriculum. I know many people are very interested in that. The board's requested some more time to consider that proposal and adoption. And so administration will be working to meet the needs of the board and answer any questions and what other resources they may need as they anticipate the adoption of that. We'll be looking forward to another meeting in January, hopefully to revisit that, and we'll keep the community up to date as soon as that's scheduled. The community design team met last evening to continue work on a long-range facility design plan under the facilitation of Cunningham Group. The community design team made recommendations, and Director Burns will be commenting on that later this evening during the action item A. Well, now it's actually changed to D. But so I won't say more on the details of that, but I did want to say that we appreciate the support from our cities, mainly Lake Elmo and Woodbury, who have been working with us to provide the most timely and accurate information and data for the growth that we're experiencing, and provide that for the community design team. I'd also like to thank Dr. McDowell, who time and time again tells us he's not a demographer, but I think he's pretty close to that by now. He's done an amazing job daily to make sure that we have the most updated numbers, and they, as one of our city planners mentioned last night at the meeting, change almost on a weekly basis. So thank you to Dr. McDowell for that work.
Thank you for the report. Appreciate that. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to have open forum. As I mentioned earlier, we have a target tonight of trying to reach 2 hours. Tonight, we have 15 speakers, and when I get to that, after I read the introductory statement, I'm going to ask one speaker who's up first, obviously, to come forward, but then I'm also going to name the next speaker, and if they could come up to the front and perhaps sit in the first row, and we'll keep to do that to try to expedite the process. One other caution, please, and in the interest of helping us meet that time limit, Sherry's a little hard to see tonight, but if you come to speak, she's going to be to your right if you're a speaker. And generally what she does is to hold up a signal when there's 2 minutes left, 1 minute left, 30 minutes, or not 30 minutes, 30 seconds. And then what will happen is an alarm will go off, but we need you to stick to that alarm. So if you're in the middle of a sentence, fine, finish that sentence, but we need your help to make that work. So having said that, the sign-in sheets were made available 30 minutes prior to and up to the start of the meeting. Due to time limitations, we have limited the number of speakers to 15, with each speaker receiving 3 minutes. After you address the board, please leave the podium. Stillwater Area School District welcomes input from citizens, as community involvement, we believe, fosters better decision-making and improved learning experiences for all students. While comments and questions are welcome during open forum, law prohibits the board from discussing concerns about individual employees or students in a public meeting. We will stop the proceedings immediately if employee or student privacy issues are raised, and direct the speaker to forward comments regarding individual employees or students to the superintendent. Because we are modeling civil discourse for our community, speakers are encouraged to present their testimony in a respectful manner. Vulgarity, character attacks, malice, or specific complaints identifying staff or students by name or implication will not be permitted. The board will not deliberate, discuss, or engage in conversation with speakers during open forum. However, the board may ask administration to review the concerns presented. So our first speaker for tonight, and would she please come forward, is Heather Morris, and Christy Mack is on deck. So Christy, if you'll come forward and sit in that first row, please.
Hi, Heather Morris, Marine. Along with the board, I'd like to address my community. I moved here about a year ago, and as of this week, I'm a former member of the community design team. I was hoping my background in construction could be of service to my community when weighing the options of how to organize our facilities. What I experienced as I progressed through the design process was a feeling of concern. Facts have been misconstrued, the process has been rushed. A few things to note. One, we were partway through a meeting one night when people asked for a vote and consensus to add on to Brookview. Why would we do that, and why would there be a person videoing it? Two, the sole consensus of that CDT had reached was regarding Lake Elmo, his in desperate need of attention. Yet no actions are being taken like this addition onto Brookview. Why? The process of CDT was around 9 sessions, about 4 hours per night, including 3 tour nights. This is not enough time to weigh the facts responsibly and with integrity. Yet here we are ready to vote on a certificate of participation, essentially forcing the community's hand to build the addition. If this addition is the right thing to do, why are you proceeding with a vote tonight? Why would you force this non-voter approved means of funding? Why not let it go to ballot? I do believe there is growth in the southern end of our district, but I understand that our urgency needs to be focusing on Lake Elmo. After the CDT toured the schools, there were comments specifically regarding Lake Elmo, such as the school needs to get torn down, some were angry and upset, yet here we are debating on a wing. What are we really talking about here? We're talking about making good spaces for our children, making safe, healthy spaces for all kids. All of us have chosen to live in the communities we reside in. Some live in the country, some in the city, some in condensed neighborhoods. We need to support them all. I have heard comments such as people being frustrated their child can't go to Brookview when they can see the school from their driveway, just like the kids from Marine or Oak Park that now play in these schools' empty playgrounds across from their homes. I've heard that people don't want their kids to suffer long bus rides, just like there are kids in the northern end of our district suffering through a 1-hour bus ride to school each way. Please remember that while some on one side of this conflict are protecting and fighting for their children, there were and still are families on the other side doing the same thing. Why is this addition so important that we're willing to seek and destroy each other? It sounds really harsh wording, but to me, that's what I'm seeing. The one thing I do know is that this community is fierce about their children. You would not all be here if you weren't. If you're here for any other motive, I suggest you step back. I would ask the leadership start being leaders. I would ask the community to take a breath and remember what they're part of. Remember that, yes, we need to be fiscally responsible, but at one time, all of our schools were open and this community voted for a bond to support them all. Yet here we are in this place, and it's not a good place, and I'm not sure how we get back to empathy and compassion. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Christy Mack, and on deck is Melanie Sailor. And Melanie, would you please come forward?
Hi, Christy Mack, Stillwater. I wasn't going to speak tonight. I've said to my family that I've said all the words I can think to express my concerns, but I'm going to try again now, and I'm going to focus just on one main issue. I'm extremely concerned about what has recently come out of the community design team. The plans for construction of 3 new facilities, in my opinion, is out of the realm of reasonableness. The Morris Leatherman survey showed us that the community does not favor building new. The latest list coming out of the community design team seems more like a wish list rather than something that is actually reasonable and workable. The most irritating and concerning thing out of all of it to me is that there are no definite plans to fully reopen Oak Park as a school. We have this building sitting here, ready and waiting. Open it. Many are talking about the need for neighborhood schools in the South. We have one right here. Do you know that this school is about 5 minutes from Anderson Elementary and about 10 minutes from Lake Elmo? The school is not in the far reaches of the district. It is literally in the heart of our school district. Why is it that it is highly valued for new developments to get neighborhood schools, but older established neighborhoods do not get the same consideration? Oak Park had the highest number of walkers in the district. It has beautiful, expansive outdoor space. There are windows in nearly every room. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this building. I heard it was mentioned that it would be too costly to bring Oak Park into the 21st century as it's a 1960s build. Who says that's needed for learning? If that's the case, then Afton Lakeland will need a complete overhaul, as I believe it's roughly the same age. My kids had a great education at Oak Park, and I'm sure children at Afton Lakeland are getting a great education. It's not about bricks and mortar, right? Reopening Oak Park should be part of any plan coming out of the CDT. Voters will be happy to know we're trying to use what we have, in addition to asking for the new that we need. Enough talk, enough deflection, just open it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Melanie, and while she's coming up, Carrie Rolstad is on deck, please.
I was excited when I found out I was one of the 30 selected by the board to be on the community design team. I felt confident that I could bring some fresh perspective to this team. When I found out that the team had increased to 90 members selected by administration, I was concerned, but assured that this was still a community team. Having now been through the entire process, here's an overview from someone who has attended every meeting and every school tour. Number one, we did not get into the heart of the project until 4 or 5 meetings in, so we lost several members. Number two, administration and principals attended almost every meeting, so honest discussion was non-existent. Number three, tours for every facility were scheduled. 80 to 90% of the team did not attend any of the tours. Number four, administration and Kraus-Anderson presented on the need to expand Brookview prior to any voting by the team. Decision-making was the most troubling area for me. As on average, there were only 30 to 35 team members at any meeting, we should have been able to voice our opinions freely and vote on individual district assets. Instead, we were put at tables and had to come to consensus by table. Majority ruled. If you didn't agree with the decisions, it didn't matter, as the majority at the table reported out the results. The most flawed and reckless process Cunningham used was the blue dot exercise. Each table had 1 to 2 district assets that they reported on in terms of what improvements were needed at each facility. Then at 9:10, we were given blue dots to put next to our top priorities. There were several critical flaws with this process. Number one, many team members had already left as the meeting went well beyond the 4-hour time slot. And number two, several district assets were not included, so no option to vote on them. Making decisions based on a flawed process is dangerous, irresponsible, and unethical. Yet Cunningham pushed through. I specifically asked twice during the last meeting if or how the blue dot results were used. I was assured that the information from the dot exercise was not used. Yet when we were asked to vote on the options presented to us by Cunningham, the options selected by them were based on the blue dot exercise. We were given one proposal to vote on, no options. As an example, for Oak Park, our vote was for renovating Oak Park to move central services with transition into it, and then sell central services building and site. When we asked about opening Oak Park up back as a school, Cunningham told us that it was not a 21st century school. The only thing that was unanimous was to do something with Lake Emil. I cannot understand the immediate need to spend $7 million to expand Brookview. The inequities in the facilities between these two schools is staggering and frankly appears discriminatory. I've been on many teams during my 30 years at a Fortune 50 company. I've never been on a team where we had to come to a decision as a table and where majority ruled at the table. But the teams I were on were looking for the best options and valued every team member's opinion. They were not teams that were looking for validation to previously determined outcomes. So board members, you now have the unfortunate position of making decisions based on a severely flawed process that was hijacked by administration that will produce a plan that is not accurate, nor does it properly reflect all CDT members' voices.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carrie Worlstead. On deck is Sandy Hayner.
Hello. My name is Carrie Rolstead, and I'm a resident of Stillwater Township. I'm also one of the 30 original members of the Long Range Planning Committee. I've been encouraged to speak tonight to offer my perspective. After the initial 30 members were vetted by the board, 40 additional members were added by administration. These 40 members were handpicked and did not go through the same vetting process. It was at this time I no longer considered this a community design team, and in my opinion, the derailment started. Throughout the process, the group was strategically steered toward a predetermined outcome. While I support some aspects of the plan, I do not agree with the process. Cunningham allowed administration to have too much presence on the committee. Some of the members resigned, and many no longer show up. I can only imagine they might feel like I do. Tonight, I'm their voice. Each night of facility tours had no more than 15 members in attendance, which is unfortunate because I felt these were the most insightful part of the project. After all, we were a facilities planning committee. I'd like to speak about the last meeting that I attended, which was Tuesday. I was utterly disappointed with what transpired at that meeting. It was rushed. Any conversation that started was stopped, and we were redirected. We are only allowed to share thoughts at our tables of 4 to 5. There was a big push to reach consensus as a table, which watered down any unique or creative ideas. It was not an organic process at all. It lacked robust conversation as an entire group. Instead, There were instances where we were asked to stand up to indicate our position. The process was belittling and uncomfortable at times, especially when you found yourself to be in the minority on a contentious topic. The room was full of administration, principals, and other district employees. Only 15 of the original board-approved 30 members were there. 15. It was unclear who was to be participating and adding their voice to the conversation and decision-making process, and who was there observing and available to reference if a question arose. Under administration's influence, Cunningham also ignored the Morris-Leatherman survey, showing overwhelming opposition to building a new school. Instead, we're potentially proposing building 3 new facilities. We should at least present the board with a plan that has some chance of voter approval. What they've done is propose a wish list of ideas and items the community won't support. The bottom line, Cunningham has failed to do their job. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sandy Hayner. On deck is Carrie Pitty.
Hello, my name is Sandy Hayner, Stillwater, Minnesota. I did not write this. This is an article that I just happened to read, and I just thought it was fitting, given some of the things that I was hearing, and even more fitting after hearing these guys. So, this article is called The Delphi Technique, Let's Stop Being Manipulated. More and more, we are seeing citizens being invited to participate in various forms of meetings, councils, or boards to help determine public policy in one field or another. They are supposedly being included to get input from the public to help officials make final decisions on taxes, education, community growth, or whatever their particular subject might be. It sounds great. Unfortunately, surface appearances are often deceiving. So you or a Mr. or Mrs. Citizen decide to take part in one of these meetings. Generally, you'll find that there is already someone designated to lead or facilitate the meeting. Supposedly, the job of the facilitator is to be neutral, non-directing helper to see that the meeting flows smoothly. Actually, he or she is there for the exact opposite reason, to see that the conclusions reached during the meeting are in accord with a plan already decided upon by those who called the meeting. The process used to facilitate the meeting is called the Delphi Technique. This Delphi technique was developed by the Rand Corporation for the U.S. Department of Defense back in the 50s. It was originally intended for use as a psychological weapon during Cold War. However, it was soon recognized that the steps of Delphi could be very valuable in manipulating any meeting towards a predetermined end. So how does this process take place? The techniques are well developed and well defined. First, the person who will be leading the meeting, the facilitator or change agent, must be likable and with whom those participating in the meeting can agree or sympathize. It is therefore the job of the facilitator to find a way to cause a split in the audience to establish one of the few people as a bad guy while the facilitator is perceived as the good guy. Facilitators are trained to recognize potential opponents and how to make such people appear foolish, aggressive, extremist, etc. Once this is done, the facilitator establishes him or himself as the friend of the rest of the audience, and the stage is now set for the rest of the agenda. At this point, the audience is generally broken up into discussion or breakout groups of 7 or 8 people each. Each of these groups is to be led by a subordinate facilitator. Within each group, discussion takes place of issues already decided upon by the leadership of the meeting. Here, too, the facilitator manipulates the discussion into the desired direction, isolating and demeaning any opposing viewpoints. Generally, participants are asked to write down their ideas and disagreements with the papers to be turned in and compiled for general discussion. This is the weak link in the chain, which you are not supposed to recognize. Who compiles the various notes into the final agenda for discussion? Well, those who are running the meeting. How do you know that the ideas on your notes were included in the final result? You don't. You may realize that your idea was not included and come to the conclusion that you were probably in the minority. You recognize that all the other citizens feel the same way. They have no idea whether their ideas were compiled into the final result. You don't even know if anyone's ideas were part of the conclusions. Rarely does anyone challenge the process, since each concludes that he or she was in the minority and different from all the others. So now those who organized the meeting in the first place are able to tell the participants and the rest of the community that the conclusions reached at the meeting are the result of public participation. So there's more to it. I will email it to you, but it just sounds awfully similar to what we've been hearing about. So think that through.
Carrie is our next speaker, and Carrie will be followed by Kate Webster.
Good evening, Board and Superintendent Pontrelli. My name is Carrie Pitty. I live in West Lakeland Township. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a parent of a Stillwater grad, an 11th grader, and I'm also a teacher at Brookview Elementary. There are several topics I could focus on tonight that drive my passion. The secondary literacy curriculum, my support for Superintendent Pontrelli and her administrative leadership team, substitute teacher challenges due to the fact that we do not have competitive pay with our neighbors, the condition of the facilities at Brookview's neighbor, Lake Elmo Elementary, and the recommendation to move the Spanish immersion program to Oak Park. Oh, and the new one to add is the address to which district business is now being sent. Tonight, though, I'm here to share my thoughts about something within your control by a vote. Tonight, you have the ability to show leadership and purpose for your role in supporting all of the students in the district by voting to expand Brookview. Within the last weeks, we have heard from many educated and highly regarded speakers sharing all the reasons why it should be voted to use the funding mechanism to expand. A no vote tonight to me means this: you didn't listen to the recommendations and have your own agenda. You believe students should be learning in inappropriate spaces. You disregard the expertise of our administration. You disregard the expertise of our building principals. You disregard the work of our community design team. You disregard the words of parents of children who are asking for more space. You disregard the words of the teachers from both Lake Elmo and Brookview who support the expansion and see this as a starting point to help meet the needs for all of the children in the South. You disregard the recommendations of the Woodbury City planners. You disregard the work of the demographers. A no vote to me shows you are not fiscally responsible to use funding meant for districts to use in this type of a situation. A no vote means a lack of care and concern for the increasing preschool enrollment possibilities at Brookview, therefore showing you are not interested in over the 80% capture rate of the preschool students entering our buildings. In watching, listening, reading, and studying the moves of this board, a no vote proves to me your intention to not move this district forward, but to continue to tear this district into sections of them, us, over there, this side, you, me, etc. Vote to expand Brookview. Send a message that you don't have a personal agenda and you are a voice for the entire district. Make tonight the night to show our district that we have needs, we have a checklist of things to focus, we have the funding mechanism to achieve one of the items on the checklist, that you have heard the voices, you understand the research, and acknowledge the support. Send a message that our board cares about and listens to all parts of our district. We have a lot more work to do. Show that you are dedicated starting tonight to do the work for all of our children in the district. Tonight's message with supporting the Brookview expansion is, we can do better, so we did. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kate. And Kate, I'll call up Josiah Hill is on deck, please.
Good evening. I am Dr. Kate Webster, preferred pronouns she, her, hers. I've taught at Anderson Elementary, Lake Elmo, Oak Park, Oakland Middle School, and I'm currently at Brookview Elementary and Lake Elmo. I'm also the parent of a future preschooler. I stand here before you on behalf of the students, families, and staff at Brookview Elementary School. It has become tradition at Brookview that at the beginning of the year, our school community unites through a book that shares a message. This year, our message is all are welcome here. As a board, you have the responsibility and opportunity to do what we do, welcome students, all students. Tonight's decision should not be a difficult one if you truly believe, as our staff and community do, that all are welcome here to not only our school, but the Stillwater Area School District. For our staff and community, it's about sending the message that all are welcome. The supportive message that the board recognizes the need for an expansion and will make this decision for the children of our district, all of our children. Brookview is running out of options of where to educate. More space is needed. The Stillwater area students in the Brookview attendance area are filling preschool classes within minutes and creating long waiting lists. Expanding Brookview sends the message to our growing community that you are welcome here. The question in front of you is whether our students matter enough to vote for an expansion, whether you care that spaces are not available for our students to learn, whether you value the voices in our community who have over and over stated that expanding Brookview is the first of many steps to create appropriate learning spaces for the students in this district. You have heard from the Brookview staff that they support this expansion. You have heard from administration that they support this expansion. You have heard from the CDT team that they support this expansion. Our past board supported this expansion. Now is your opportunity to support this expansion and welcome all students to our district. A no vote tonight is a no to our students from the people who are publicly elected to be a voice for all. the publicly elected group who ran on a platform to bring our community together. Our students deserve better than this. Put students first. Our community does, our staff does, our principals do. Now is your opportunity to show that you, the board, does too. To our students in the district, on behalf of our Brookview staff, we want you to know, you have a place here, you have a space here. All are welcome here. Expand Brookview immediately. Thank you.
And Josiah, you're next, but I just want to call Jim Franklin forward. He's our on-deck speaker.
Thank you, Board Chair Potacek, Superintendent Pontrelli, and members of the board. I'm Josiah Hill. I live at 1124 Macy Way here in Stillwater. I want to thank the board for this opportunity to briefly share a message this evening on behalf of the SCA Executive Board. At our monthly meeting last night, the Executive Board took formal action to share a message of thanks and a message of support for our colleagues and for our fellow community members who have taken part in the community design team process. Again, this is a message of support for that design team and the process they went through, and an acknowledgement of confidence held by the SCEA Executive Board and the recommendations to come from this group's work. Last night's adopted resolution provided an opportunity for our elected SCEA building representatives from every site in the district to share their thoughts and concerns surrounding the community design team's recommendations to come. Many of these concerns centered on the fear that recommendations brought forward would not be adopted or even seriously considered. I'm joined here at the meeting tonight by various members of our executive board to deliver this message of support. And again, it's for our colleagues who served on that group and that team, along with community members. We recognize and respect their dedication, their deep consideration of the challenges before our district, and their expertise in this area due to the depth of the work they undertook to understand all the elements of our district's current reality and needs regarding facilities. They were all asked to use their talents and time to the tune of more than 1,000 collective hours to bring forth recommendations that best serve the interests of the students, families, and communities in our district. We, as elected representatives of the licensed educators of District 834, firmly support the voice of this collective body that deeply engaged in this vital work. Much like the concern I shared with this board last month regarding the failure to adopt the recommendation brought forth by the Secondary English Language Arts Curriculum Review Team, the fear expressed to me by many present last night was similar. It was a fear that should the board choose not to regard the recommendations brought by the community design team, it could lead to an intense erosion of confidence, trust, and faith in District 834 as an organization. This loss could lead to deep disappointment, disenchantment, and worse yet, scorn for the district we all care so deeply about. In the end, it's our kids, it's the students who will pay the ultimate price resulting from such a loss of faith by our communities. Again, the SCA Executive Board wishes to express a message of support for this design team, their deep dedication to the charge that they were given to bring forth recommendations to this board. The SCEA wishes to recognize and thank each member, both our neighbors and colleagues, who volunteered a great deal of their time because they care deeply for and endeavor to support and foster a bright future for all 834 students. To every member of the design team, the SCEA Executive Board honors your time, your effort, and the developed expertise you brought to this important work. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jim Franklin. On deck is Kate Neiman.
Good evening, Chair Potacek, members of the board, Superintendent Pontrelli. Dear board directors, you have put in a lot of work this year examining the financial viability of Brookview Elementary expansion. Thank you for that. The need for expansion has been well documented by demographic data, and it appears to be validated by the current community design team. The approval of the expansion was voted on and passed by the previous board. The need for that total capacity was clearly noted by the previous long-range facilities planning committee. The current board, however, has denied approval of the funding for the already approved expansion so far this year. I appreciate your willingness to thoroughly weigh the pros and cons of different funding mechanisms and community consent. At this point, after your further study of the financial availability of funds, as opposed to the proposed bond timeline, I would request that you employ your fiduciary obligations as a board member for the entire district's sake. Please approve the inclusion of the Brookview expansion in the tax levy vote today, December 19th. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kate Neiman, and she will be followed by Peggy Franklin.
Hi, good evening. I'm Kate Neiman from Stillwater Township, taxpayer extraordinaire and mother of a former pony. And I wanted to talk tonight about my endorsement of voting forward with the Brookview funding. I like to play with numbers. I'm not real good at it, so I hope administration keeps their ears shut as I probably screw some things up here. But, you know, when I think about this, I heard a rumor, and maybe it's not correct, that there was a waiting list of 24 kids at Brookview. And that's not a big deal to me, but when I think about the funding formula from the state, we get, what, $10,000 per seat per year. And I thought, that's, what, $240,000 a year if those kids don't get to go to school at Brookview, and especially if they choose to go outside the district. So $240,000 a year, and say those kids leave the district their kindergarten year and they don't come back, we multiply that times 13 years because it's kindergarten through the time they graduate, right? That's over $3 million on one cohort of students that doesn't get in the door at Brookview. So let's cut the cake in another direction. We've got, in 2015, this district voted for a referendum. We passed a referendum which included language for building a school in the southern part of the district. And it was pretty well anticipated that that was a 550-seat school that we were to build. We don't have 550 seats at Brookview now. We've got 450 seats. And I think we can play with that number because different ideas come up, whatnot. Again, I'm not the expert, but when I think about that number for state reimbursement, that's $10,000 a seat, and that's 100 seats. And I think that's $1 million, right? A year. That's a lot of money. And so I think about that and I think, well, I don't think we've lost $1 million per year because I'm not sure we could have filled those seats up to now. But Brookview was built in 2017, or it opened in 2017. And if we push this voter referendum, we push this to a voter-approved referendum, probably could open that expansion in 2023. Maybe 2022, but 2023. So we're talking, if it opens in 2023, that's 6 years from the time Brookview has opened to the time we get the rest of those 100 seats in. So that's $1 million times 6 years. So that seems like a lot of money to me. And it seems to me like every year is another $1 million. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Peggy Franklin, and on deck is Diane Polisek.
Hello, I'm Peggy Franklin. I live in West Lakeland, and good evening, Board Chair Batacek and all the directors and Superintendent Pontrelli, and happy holidays. You know, it's busy for everyone, and I'm sorry this isn't my best effort. I sent this to you last night. I'm not sure everybody got the chance to read it, and I just wanted to say it out loud. I have asking you to do two things. One is to expand Brookview. I think this is clearly necessary, well documented, and advocated by the team and the select consulting group that you put together, and the teachers, and the principals, and the public, and the audit report. Please don't waste any money. Please don't waste money on the process by ignoring the recommendations. You have the funds available to get it done, and I've not heard a scenario where our taxes would changed significantly. It always sounds like it's in about the $20 range. So please take a stand for our students and do what you can do to help. Then keep doing more. There's a lot to be done. Sitting here, standing still is, and while running up bills just won't help. We're not moving forward that way. And I've also heard the sentiment that because expanding Brookview won't solve the overcrowding problem, that it shouldn't be done. And I just want to comment that, so it's winter, say you're in a big pile-up accident and you happen to have bought a lot of blankets at Penny's, and you go passing them out to the people that are waiting for help, but you know you've got more in the car, but you don't want to go get them because you can't give everybody one, so you decide to stop there. And so I just see it as something similar like that. You're not filling up the space, you're not using it to capacity, and you're not making the use that you could of that building. And then my second thing to say is, please follow the rules. Don't get into trouble with open meeting laws. I don't think that's worth it in the long run. Don't violate your own policies. Please notify all the board members of any proposed legal contact all at once. And make all the legal information, the questions, the results, the advice available immediately to all board members. Your website states that you speak with one voice, which implies that you communicate with each other effectively. And if you can't do these things, then please pay the bills yourself. It is ironic, however, that the board chairman and the board majority create the legal bills with impunity and have the invoices sent to the director's home, and then he passes them off to be paid by the taxpayers. It is incredible that those same members expect all other board members to route their legal questions through the board chair. Why would anyone seeking legal advice go through the person who is behaving in an ethically questionable way? And what is good for one board member, I believe, is good for all. And what you're doing now is not really good for anyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane, you're our next speaker, and on deck is Randall Newton.
Hi, thank you, Chair Tasik. Thank you, Superintendent Pontrelli and board directors. I've been up here before, so you've heard me before, but I wasn't going to speak, but I feel like I do represent some of the people that I want you to hear about tonight. I do early childhood screening for the school district in Stillwater, and it's amazing to me how many parents are coming from our southern part of our district, and these are 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. And they're coming and they say, well, we'll go to Brookview School. We live really very close. And I'm going, well, I hope so. And I don't say anything, but I said, just pay attention to what's happening because I hope that your kids will be able to go to Brookview School. I know the development that's going in, the trees are cut. It's the one development closest to the school. It's coming, and I hope that these parents with these 3- and 4-year-olds are our kids, our pony kids growing up, and don't decide to go to Woodbury or private school or somewhere else because it's too far. And the school that's right next door isn't available to them. That's important. I want those kids to be pony kids with Charlie, and Charlie's watching me tonight. Hi, Charlie. She's my future pony. She wants to go to those kids. She wants the kids from the south part of the county to be her partners at Stillwater High School too. So you are the board. You're elected to listen to all the kids, all the families, and all the staff. So do your job by listening to all of the kids, all the families, and all the parents and staff, those living in the south as well as north, and listen to the professionals in the field who know the job. Thank you very much.
And Randall is our next speaker, and following him will be, it looks like Francis Porpini.
Poor Benny.
Okay, thank you. Randall.
Hi, my name is Randall Newton, and I'm a community member, and I live in Lake Elmo. I'm co-chair of the World's Best Workforce, and I'm a member of the community design team. The purpose of the World's Best Workforce is to improve outcomes of education in our district. The purpose of the community design team is to gather inputs from community members, students, staff, state demographers, city planners, and architects, and turn those inputs into an infrastructure plan to improve outcomes in our district. We hired Cunningham to guide the district in this planning. We hired Cunningham because of their experience and because they have a proven process to accomplish this. Is the process perfect? Absolutely not. No process is perfect, but it's the best known way as of today to come up with a proposal. The best known way based on their experience with many other school districts. From my perspective, Cunningham has done a very good job administering the process and getting us to a vision that a large majority of the community design team can support. They're doing what we hired them to do, and we should feel good about the money spent on this. I'm confident that the plan we are developing will improve outcomes in the district. What has become clear in the process is that we have some immediate needs that cannot wait for a strategic plan. The biggest need is to expand pre-K to 5 capacity in the southern part of the district. It's clear to me and most of the community design team who have spent a good deal of time analyzing data that we do not have the luxury of waiting. We also do not have a need to wait for a referendum. You have the ability to approve that tonight. An 8 classroom expansion to relieve some of the pressure we see and will continue to see in the future. I talked earlier about outcomes. In World's Best Workforce, I have the opportunity to look at the district and talk to administrators and teachers about outcomes. This decision by the school board is a decision that will influence outcomes. We have inputs, we have data. Please positively impact outcomes by voting to expand Brookview Elementary tonight. Thank you.
Francis, you're next, but before I'll call our last speaker, and it looks like it's Vivian Vltava.
Yeah, good evening, Chair Tasik and the board members, Superintendent Pontrelli and our leadership team. I've come here before you today, this evening, speaking in support of the work of the community design team and the expansion of Brookview and some of the other recommendations. Without going into much of the rationale for the expansion of Brookview, the CDT approved this expansion almost by near unanimous vote, to the best of my understanding. However, I'm aware that one of the arguments being proposed or advanced against this expansion is the suggestion to defer this decision to the voters via a bond or referendum. I believe this is a false and disingenuous argument at this time for the following reasons. The CDT was created by this board that represents the voters. There were no objections, as I could tell, anyone can prove me wrong, in terms of the composition, the vision, and the terms of reference of the CDT. No objections. So in essence, the community agreed for the past several months on the work of the CDT. In essence, the CDT in itself is a surrogate for the voters. They've come forward, they've spent their time and effort, all their professionalism to make a recommendation to the district board. It's time for you to make a decision. I urge you to vote in the affirmative for the recommendation of the CDT and especially the expansion of Brookview. A vote for Brookview will be a clear message to the district that we are prepared to look forward and move forward, not looking at the past. There are several things that have gone wrong in this district. Brookview has been on the agenda. Lake Elmo have also been on the agenda for several years. It's time for us to move forward. Failure to vote for the CDT and Brookview expansion is an abdication of your responsibility as a board, and that you are focused on a narrow parochial agenda. I urge you to look at the wide spectrum of this district. There are needs, and those needs are very peculiar, especially in the southern part of this district. Let's don't focus on the past. Time to move forward. I urge you to vote in the affirmative for the CDT work and for Brookview expansion. Thank you.
And Vivian, you're our last speaker, please.
I have two children who went to Lake Elmo. It was overcrowded then. I understand that the district seems to be manipulative at times. I've seen that with their surveys that only give you one way to answer, so I can understand that viewpoint. But I can also look at the demographics, and anybody can. There are 299 spots too many in the north part of the district. We have extra spots, and there are 45 spots too few in the south part of the district, and the south part of the district is growing, okay? So it's pretty much like a no-brainer here. Like, we don't have enough spots in the south side of the district. It's growing. We need to capture those kids or they're going to disappear into charter schools, et cetera. And it's just irresponsible not to vote for the Brookview expansion, which will not increase our tax dollars that much because of the growth in that side of the district. Now, someone did read the mission statement of the board, which said, increasing student achievement for all students in the district, right? So you would think you wouldn't want most of your kids of color and most of your immigrants to be in overcrowded classrooms in the few schools in the south side of the district. That would not be giving equal access to education to those southern students. And it's pretty obvious, too. At best, it's a lack of care, and at worst, it's deliberate harm. I don't think you want to vote against equal access to education. It's just not right. So I think you need to vote for Brookview as an expansion. It's just obviously needed for the demographics and the numbers of classrooms, spots we have open in the north side and in the south side. And then after you vote for that Brookview expansion, we need to work as a community to help do something attractive in the north side to get kids in those classrooms. But you're still going to need classrooms in that south side. I've also heard some people grousing about how it's not really true, like if you have a preschool classroom that's L-shaped, it doesn't matter. Well, I had a kid who was a biter. And I'm telling you, you wouldn't want my kid in your classroom, in an L-shaped classroom where a teacher couldn't see where that kid was. I mean, and they're saying you don't need bathrooms in a preschool classroom, and that's just totally wrong, too. I mean, preschoolers have accidents. They need bathrooms. And if you want to capture those kids and keep them in the district, you need to expand Brookview and make sure that it's a welcoming and good environment for those kids. Thank you.
Before we go on to the consent agenda, I do want to read a statement. Several of our speakers talked about this, and it came up at our last meeting. And so this is my attempt to give you an answer. And first of all, this has to do with invoices coming directly to me, particularly at my home. And so the first part of this is thank you to my colleague for your inquiry. The legal invoices which deal with the superintendent's evaluation and related issues come directly to my home. The other legal invoices go directly to the superintendent, and she generally directs them to the finance department, who contacts me to review and approve those incurred by the Board of Education. When the legal invoices go directly to me, I see them as soon as possible, sign them if they are appropriate, and return them as soon as possible to the finance director for approval by the full board at the earliest upcoming board meeting. If they were delivered directly to the central office, I don't visit the central office every day, and the turnaround time for paying those invoices might be significantly longer. Now, what I also did, because I was requested to do that, is to ask legal counsel to prepare a statement of how we operate on invoices, and particularly these. And each board member got those this afternoon. And so if you have questions on those or any other questions you want to ask, I would say, too, I was contacted by a television station, which will be unnamed, last night, and they asked me to respond to several questions, and I did. And so what I'd like to do is to just raise those questions, give you brief answers, which I composed, and those might be other questions that you have. And some of them are a little bit redundant because I prepared that other statement before I rose these. So the first question that was asked by me was, legal fees for the district have gone up about $6,400 from last year to more than $36,000 so far this year. What has changed? Has there been more need for legal services? If you can disclose, how much of that is for the entire board versus individual members? My response was this: those numbers, and this I consulted with our attorney, do not sound accurate. Our board attorney feels the numbers you referenced for last year are wrong. Last year, and this is a quote, last year we received a ton of data requests. Data requests are generally very expensive. They usually top out at about $60,000 or $6,000 per request. The number for last year do not sound right, end of quote. In addition, it's difficult to compare last year and this year's numbers. It's apples and oranges. This year's numbers include the superintendent's evaluation and related issues. I do not have a breakdown for individual board members. Many times, the board chair contacts our attorney on behalf of individual board members' requests. Second question. At the meeting, no one seemed to know why legal bills for the board were being sent to your home. I did. You don't. I understand that. Have you gotten the chance to look to see if that is part of official policy? Is there a reason you prefer bills to be sent to your home versus somewhere where all board members can see it? Thank you for your inquiry. The legal invoices, and that's what I read to you. I'll go on to the last question, the third question. A board member mentioned the issues would be discussed further at a future board meeting. Has that been scheduled? All board members receive an electronic copy and have access to our monthly disbursements. They can and do occasionally separate any item or items from the consent agenda to discuss and vote on individually. Board policy directs them to contact and share their specific questions prior to the meeting. The board was contacted by email the day of the meeting that the board member had questions. That occurred approximately at 1:30 before that meeting, related to disbursements. But no questions, and many of you know this because you saw this when I was learning the process, but no questions or topics were shared prior to the meeting with the chair. All I was notified was that there would be questions on the disbursements. I said, and I'm doing that now, I plan to read a similar statement to the above at Thursday's school board meeting prior to the consent agenda. So at that point, if you have other questions, please let me know, contact me. That legal statement we can make available if people want to see a much more expanded explanation. So having said that, I would take a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved by Sarah, second.
I'll second.
Tina? All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your right hand, please.
Aye.
It passes unanimously, and so we are moving from the consent agenda to the report by Mark Burns on the community design team, please.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to just provide a relatively brief report about our the community design team meeting that occurred on Tuesday. We began the meeting with some information on needs of the ALC and transitions program, those programs, because there were some questions at a previous meeting. We moved on and there was some information shared on the anticipated build rates of single-family and multifamily housing developments that are near Brookview coming in the next few years. And it turns out that the build rate looks to be faster than we had earlier anticipated. Then the majority of the meeting was spent on what was called the synthesis offerings, projects and options for each school building as well as the central services building. We conducted table discussions of likes and dislikes of the synthesized options. And what is meant by that is there were proposals that were put together on each of the school buildings as well as central services building that was based on input of the community design team in previous meetings, put together into what was the initial potential offering. And each table had an opportunity to discuss what they liked about that offering and what they disliked about that offering. We then had an opportunity to share that with the rest of the team. And at a few points along the way, we did have some votes that were taken, both some table consensus votes, and there were also some individual votes in which every member, with the exception of board members, and there were some principals and other staff members that were there just as resources that were also asked not to participate in the votes. Some pertinent votes that were given. Lake Elmo, one of the options is to, as you heard when the public speakers, to build 2 new schools with a capacity of between 450 and 650 students. This is a table vote of 9 tables for, with 1 table against. There was another proposal of not to remodel the existing Lake Elmo building. The votes for tables were 10 tables in agreement with that, 0 tables in opposition to that. So again, there would be 10 tables, unanimous table-wise, of those in attendance who did not believe that remodeling the existing Lake Elmo Elementary would be appropriate. There was also discussion about school size in Lake Elmo. 2 schools, building 2 new schools of between 450 and 650 students versus an option of building 1 school that could have a capacity of 900 plus, potentially even expandable higher. There was some discussion over this. We had some input from a few different individuals on the community design team. And again, we took a table vote. And in this case, 7 tables felt that no, we should not build a school that is of that size. And whereas 3 tables felt that we could consider building a school of that size in Lake Elmo. There was also a vote on Brookview to expand to 650 students. And this one was an individual vote. And in that case, there were 30 votes for the expansion of Brookview to 650 and 1 vote against. Then there was a further vote, individual vote, of expanding Brookview now through the certificate of participation, rather than waiting until a bond referendum in the future. And that individual vote was 29 votes for and 2 votes against. I do want to say that as being part of every meeting thus far, it's been long, it's been a lot of information. I want to thank the Cunningham Group for putting this together, and I also especially want to thank the dozens of volunteers who have devoted dozens of hours each to this process. Your dedication to this school district is certainly appreciated.
Thank you, Mark. Moving on to action items. Item A is certify the 2019 payable 2020 tax levy. Kristen Hoheisel and Director Burns. It has your name there as well. I don't know. Might be an error.
That's probably your report.
That's for the report.
Oh, okay, I see it slipped down. That got your attention, I'm sorry.
I got excited a little bit. Give this to someone else. Good evening,
Good
Chair
evening.
Potacek, Superintendent Pontrelli, school board members. Tonight, I am requesting that the board take final action on the 2019 payable 2020 tax levy. On the cover page that was presented to you, what you will be looking to adopt for the final levy is one of two options. One of the, or at least listed. I made the assumption, and under the chair's guidance, I was told that it was probably a safe assumption that we wouldn't be looking at any other levy categories other than the lease levy that was presented at the Truth and Taxation hearing on December 12th. And so with that, there is two columns. One that includes the COP for Brookview Elementary with the total levy of $38,723,648.07. This is what was presented last week. And then there is another to remove the COP for Brookview, and you have heard my terminology before of this would be where you under levy a particular category. That category would be in the general fund under leases, and that total levy would be $246,648.07. District administration is requesting a motion and an adoption of one of those versions.
Can I make a motion?
Okay,
Oh,
thank you.
Okay.
Tina?
I would like to make a motion to adopt the total levy amount in the amount of $38,246,648.07.
Okay, who is second? Okay, discussion, questions? Jennifer?
So Director Hoheisel, I'm not seeing a huge difference in the two. Can you, what's the dollar amount difference here? You've got, so with Brookview, $38,723,648. Without Brookview, $38,246,000, so 723,246 and 648. Could you again remind us, and this has gone on for a long time, so it should be in my brain, but it's not.
Before you do that, is it on a slide?
It's not on a slide, it is on the website. Well, there's two, you're actually not going to be able to see it. The two slides that I provided for the website were the totals of each category broken down where you can see the net tax capacity, the referendum market value, so they would have been from the Truth and Taxation slides. And actually, the first number, it was presented as the preliminary levy, the lower number, and then we added the COP at that time, and then it went up for the TNT. So the September number is the $38,246,648.07, and then the higher number was what was presented last week. The difference is $477,000.
The difference is $470,000.
$477.
With Brookview.
Correct.
Expansion.
Correct.
Up to 8 classrooms, is that right?
Oh, sorry.
And then I have another question.
Yes.
And then per household, if you could speak to that for a $300,000 household, is it still around $13 per year, and then for how many years?
It would be for 15 years.
Okay.
That was what the debt would be issued for. And I want to say, and I'm pulling out the slides from September, we went from an estimated, and I'm just going to, I'll give you exact. Tonight feels like an exact kind of night. $146.01 was the estimate to $133.52. So you're talking rounding up $13 for a $300,000 home.
Okay. And those of you who have packets, this is on page 16, or else you can look at the screen. And Carissa, thank you for posting that.
I was wondering what board members not just toured the building, I know there were tours, but during the school day? Because I was surprised, I heard, and I'm looking for clarity, that only 2 board members had actual during the day tours to see the actual school day, and then a subsequent conversation with the principal. Did everyone go and do that, or?
I
I've
toured
done
when
it,
we,
not
when
just
we
this year.
read
Yeah.
last spring.
Okay,
Mhm.
and you had a conversation.
Mhm.
Did everyone see the preschool rooms? Okay.
And if,
Mark?
okay. Because you brought up about the tour, I did take the opportunity recently to visit. I also had the chance to be at Brookview a year ago when I think maybe all the board members, and we had a chance to read. But this was a very interesting opportunity for me because I got to see a lot more of the building kind of in action. When I was there reading, I was kind of walked to specific places. And I experienced a few classrooms, but I didn't really get to see it kind of in working operation during the day. And I would encourage board members, if you have a chance to go there, as I think we'll have a chance with our liaison work, we may have a chance to see each building in action. But to see Brookview, there were a few things that I would say jumped out at me that I didn't have a chance to really experience when we went there to read. You can really feel how the population in that building has caused challenges. There's one that really I take away with is the art room has been now repurposed as a second grade room. And the art room, if you will, is in the media center. It's not a room, it's just a portion of the room. And they have moved the bookshelves and the books out of that portion of the room. And they've tried to, because it's on carpeting in the media center, they have tables there for the kids to have art. And the art teacher brings the art supplies into that portion of the room. But of course, when the art class is going on, it's loud and people are moving around, so it's not very useful as a media center while there's art class. But I also saw what struck me is the kids were working on a project that, like most art projects are, there's some mess to it and there's something. And they were almost done with their project, and I saw 2 of the students they're done with their project, but they've got their hands up and they're looking around, what do I do now? And I realized at that point, they're looking to wash their hands, but there's not a sink in the library. So it's, what do they do with that? Well, what the art teacher does is she puts a bucket of water on a cart and pushes that down into the media center and has some towels so they can dip it in the water and wash their hands. But it's something that you don't necessarily recognize when you just see it on paper. There are a couple other things that I noticed that I did want to share with you all. One was that second grade room, or the art room that's been repurposed as a second grade room now, is immediately adjacent to the music room. Well, what's going on in the music room? You're singing, you've got music playing, and of course, they're doing the best they can, but there's some disruption because there's music playing immediately adjacent to a learning room that's there. So that's a challenge, even though it looks like a room that has a square footage that could work as a second grade room. It kind of doesn't. There are disruptions. There's a room that had previously been used for other purposes, now is being used for pre-K. As one of our open forum speakers mentioned, that it is L-shaped. So they have to have specific types of learning environments for that shape. There are tables in one part of the L, and then when they can't have kids in the other part because they can't see all the kids throughout the class. So they actually have to be in half of that class at any one time. They can't use the entirety of the class. Plus, the room immediately adjacent to it is used as the band room. It didn't used to be, but the band room had to be repurposed over to what is right next to it. So when there's band practice, Well, the pre-K kids can't. They have to have free play time because you can't have learning while the tuba is honking. So there's, I think, one other, then the orchestra has also been moved to the conference room in the main office with the table in the conference room. So they're making do with it, but it's not how it should be. This is not the facility that we should be welcoming our students into. And that's, when you see it in action, it is completely different than when you walk through it when it's empty. And I just wanted to share that with you. Those are some of the things that jumped out at me.
Thank you. Jen, or Liz?
I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. We received an email on December 12th that said expanding Brookview by 6 rooms would allow 75 additional students to be in the building. 8 rooms would allow 125 students to be in the building, because a couple of weeks ago I had said adding 6 classrooms is really only adding 3 classes. And I just wanted to clarify that that is the case for if we add 6 classrooms, it would be 3 classes of people, and then 2 more would be for the bubble. Because what it means is with 6 classrooms, it's going to add an additional section of 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and then it's going to put other people back in a more appropriate space, like you were just talking about. So one of my questions is, we then received some more information that said future potential developments, a map, and because you were saying, the building is coming in more. So the most we can do, period, is 125 students. But the map we received shows 175 potential students in 2021. So the most we can do is 125, so we can't even accommodate all of the growth that's going to have just in the Brookview area. So my question was, I know that an email had gone out that said, while boundary changes are imminent, and this is on November 26th, while boundary changes are imminent as a result of growth in Lake Elmo and Woodbury, further delays to Brookview would create more urgency for decisions to relieve overcrowding at Brookview and Lake Elmo, as well as relieve pressure on Anderson. So knowing that we have more students in the Brookview area than we can even accommodate, I don't know how that's going to help Lake Elmo and how it's going to help Anderson. And I understand what you're saying, that people are having to make sacrifices in different rooms, but I think that what you've heard and what people have said in the community design team is that the biggest need in the district is for Lake Elmo. And this would not help Lake Elmo, and I can't see any way, because we can't even accommodate the students that are in the Brookview area.
If that's directed towards me.
No,
Well, let me do this. We got
In
another
general.
speaker, and then we'll come
Yep.
back, and Mark, if you want to
I just wanted to make
respond,
that
you
clear.
can. Please, go on.
So, Director Weisberg, you're saying it's 100, I don't know if this is on or not. It's not.
If it's red.
It should
If
be
it's red,
red.
cool up here.
Yep.
Otherwise, push the button down in front. That should, there you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Good job.
So it's 125 students that would be able to accommodate,
Right.
correct? And
Right.
so if we did build it, it would be 125 people that we would be putting into our district instead of Woodbury, correct? Would you say that?
Well, no, this says 175 students in the Brookview area. My question was, an email had gone out to everybody saying, this is going to help Lake Elmo, this is going to help Anderson. I don't see how that's possible, because the students are in the Brookview area already, and we can't even accommodate all that are going to be there. So I don't see how this helps Lake Elmo or Anderson crowding.
So to be specific, in the in the Brookview area, it would help then?
Yes, but not enough. That's my point.
But it would accommodate
It's not sufficient.
125?
Yes, 125.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing I'd add, Mark, because I agree with everything you said about Brookview. I have toured Brookview several times with and without students, and I've gone through. I also recently went through Lake Elmo twice. Jen and I both read at Lake Elmo. I had the opportunity to go through parts then. And recently, because the liaison now, at least to the end of the semester, Stephen Gordy was gracious enough to take me around, give another feel. Everything you said about pressure, crowdedness, underserving our kids, I think is even higher at Lake Elmo. And I think the committee recognized that and pressured it. I would also argue, and you and I crossed paths when Anderson was celebrating their 100th anniversary, we had an opportunity to go through that building as well. So I'm saying, I don't know who's more needy out of those groups. If I had to prioritize, I'd probably put Lake Elmo on the top, and that's no news to any of you because I've advocated that for a long time. I'd put Anderson close, especially if you're going to retain the present classrooms you have there, and then I'd put Brookview next. I'm not saying Brookview doesn't have needs. They definitely do. I also favor expansion. Timing's another question, but I favor expansion. Do you wanted to respond real quick?
Maybe just, I'll try to be short just in the response. And in terms of, does it help Lake Elmo Elementary? Well, it does in the instance that if we don't build that capacity, where do those kids go? They're going to get moved. If we don't have capacity, they're going to get moved to Lake Elmo. So having maybe not all Lake Elmo, but some will likely be rebounded to Lake Elmo. So that's one way that it can help Lake Elmo, is that it's not going to add additional kids. The other thing, when we talk about our Lake Elmo has needs, I absolutely agree. And the community design team is unanimous behind that. I agree myself. If we could raise our hand and make it happen for those schools, I would, but we can't. It's different, but we can with Brookview. We can see what little impact it has to our taxes and how sometimes we raise our hands for a lot of things, for non-voter approved levies. We have over $14 million in our Pay 2020 are non-voter approved levies. What we're talking about, that's per year, over 14 million. Now we're talking about 480,000. And a lot of times, one of the big components of a non-voter approved levy is long-term facilities maintenance. This year, we're going to approve $6 million. And it's important things that we do with that long-term facility maintenance. We fix roofs, we replace boilers, we do things that are important to keep schools in working operation. But what an opportunity we have to raise our hand and build classrooms. What a fantastic, instead of just fixing a carpet or new cabinetry, we can raise our hand and build new classes for kids.
Thank you. Tina?
So I prepared a few words just so people understand where I'm coming from. And my position really has never changed. I've always held this position. So on Tuesday evening at the CDT meeting, Bob was asked to put a slide together regarding Brookview, which was confusing because the expansion was already listed as part of Cunningham's recommendations. Lots of data was thrown at the CDT, which consisted of, according to the open forum speaker, 13 of the original 27 members, and the rest was staff. John Hunick from Kraus then prompted the group about the COP vote tonight. No data was shared regarding the growth in Lake Elmo whatsoever at that time. I heard an outspoken CDT member state that the COP is there to use in case of emergency situations such as this. Well, this isn't an emergency. Having empty buildings do not equate to emergency needs. Also, they were holding votes per table by consensus. When they asked the group what tables were for the COP, 6 of the 10 tables said yes. At that time, the same outspoken community member was allowed to scold the room for not having a stronger COP support. I was told by Judy from Cunningham that there would be a paper ballot vote, but that is not what happened. Because they didn't like the 6 out of 10 table consensus number, they were asked to stand individually to call out each vote. At that time, only 2 members stood up opposing the COP. Those numbers do not align with the 6 out of 10 tables. Why would you put the community in that position or environment? I asked for the motion to postpone the expansion last February. I asked that we wait until the CDT had finished their work. When admin brought forward the recommendation of a tax-neutral COP, I held firm in my position and explained nothing had changed, and the motion put forward and passed was not in regard to tax neutrality. I voted in the minority not to use the COP. I've stated many times that research equates smaller learning environments with successful outcomes. I agree with that research and believe Brookview is the perfect size to help ensure students have a successful elementary experience. I have also stated that if the community decided it wanted a larger building, I would support it, and that can only be determined in my eyes on a referendum.
Okay, Kristen, did you want to talk?
Well, the only thing I wanted to ask, and I apologize, Director Weisberg, because I remember seeing the number, I'm just not certain. Do you know, with given the growth or the growth side, was there a specific age range of that growth? Or is that in its entirety? Because we do have K-12. If it was K-5, then that's great. I just don't recall what it was.
I did ask, I asked the question. Well, do you want to respond, or? I did ask the question, and
I think we're on. The number reflects only K-5 because that's what Teamwork's original demographics numbers were reflective of when I checked with them. So to keep it consistent, we kept it only applicable to K-5.
Thank you.
And I think too, one of the comments I heard, and I can't remember who said it, which expert in the room, because the growth in the Brookview boundary area is new construction, it's typical that would be younger families with younger children. That would be elementary age. That's just what they expect. Can I have the floor for?
Keep going.
Okay.
I don't see, when I see another hand, I'll cut you off.
Since we're talking about the growth in Brookview, and a couple of comments have already come up, I guess I would like to speak to that too, just a little bit. I was at the community design team meeting on this past Tuesday. We did receive, as part of the packet, this map with an updated demographic. One of the city planning department members from Woodbury is also on the design team, so he was there, and he said this data, which was fresh off the presses, is already old, because basically what this is saying is that by 2024, there will be 932 new housing units built inside the Brookview boundary, which, if we count for the typical yield for that area, we figure about 0.4% of every unit. So 1 out of every other home has a child in it. And like we just said, so we can count on that being about, by 2024, 400 students, 400 elementary students. And it says in the box at the top that even with more certainty, by 2021, we can count on 175 students inside the Brookview area. And as has already been discussed, this plan for the certificate of participation, which is a non-voter approved levy, is limited because of that by the law. We can't spend more than a certain amount of money per pupil in our district. It's limited and in size as well. We can't go more than 20% of the size of the building. So, and I think there are limitations with the site itself as well. So what we've been told as a board is that this will be funding for 6 classrooms, and approximately 3 of them are already being used, essentially, because we've got kids in inappropriate places. So the first 3 classrooms will be used up right away by getting them into an appropriate place, and then all we have left after that is 3. So if we figure 25 students per classroom, this plan is enough for 75 students. And within 5 years, we're gonna have 500 or 400 students inside the Brookview boundary. So I've been saying, ever since I first heard about expansion ideas to Brookview, is that an expansion to Brookview does not make sense because of the growth in the south. What we need is another elementary school. And I'll just wrap it up by saying I found it completely wonderful to be at the community design team and hear such an emphatic support for smaller elementary schools. That is exactly what I believe in. I think 450 to 500 is the perfect size. A lot of our elementary schools are in that range already. I feel like it makes sense for us to keep our elementary schools relatively the same size if we can. And that's what Brookview is right now. And the group the other night said rather than replace Lake Elmo with a 900-student building, they wanted 2 450-student elementary schools to replace Lake Elmo. And there was pretty strong consensus for that. So it just, to me, it makes sense to keep Brookview the size that it is and to give ourselves a little bit more time, figure out what we have to do in the meantime to make it work for families and for students, and put all of this on a bond that some of the speakers tonight said that they wanted us to vote for this because they want to bring the community together. If we make a decision unilaterally without voter support on one building in the district, I don't think that that does that. I think if we put a bond in front of the community that has something in it for everyone, that everyone can get excited about, that's what will bring our community together.
Yeah. I would like to just clarify something about the community design team. I am a member of that too. Yesterday I went to it. Unfortunately, I had to leave at 9 o'clock because I had to go do some physics homework. But I was able to stay there for the Brookview vote. And one of the reasons why they did the Brookview vote was to make sure that we had a consensus before we brought it to you guys. Now, I don't know if they gave you the exact vote number. It wasn't done on paper, but it was done by us standing and sitting. And maybe Director Burns has the exact number, but from what I saw, it was that the minority was 2 people sitting down when we voted for Brookview expansion. And so that's majority over minority. Also, I'd like to just point out that we are a representative democracy. And when we look at the community design team, that is to represent the whole entire district, the people, the community. First off, you guys are already representatives, but to add on to the community design team, that's just another layer of representation. And so when we look at the structure of our government, I'm in AP Gov and we talk about this all the time. And so I've been saturated with it, but I think that that's pretty clear that the people support it. Also, my question to you guys is what will happen if the kids in that area don't go to Brookview or if we don't expand it? What's going to happen to the 125, the 175, or the growing number that's going to be happening there? Yeah, so that's my question that I'd like to end with.
That's a good question.
I guess I think that's a great question because a lot of times we end up having discussions, we make a lot of statements, but we don't really learn from each other about, well, what does this mean? What is the impact of it? And I think the community really deserves to hear what we as a board are thinking. What happens if this does not go, if we do not expand on a Brookview? What does happen? What happens to these students who are currently in Brookview, who are going to be going to Brookview next year, maybe the year after that? Where do they go? I mean, I think it's worthwhile to have a discussion about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, we need that discussion. I would say the bigger discussion for me, the bigger goal for me is to pass a collective bonding issue that the whole district is going to get behind. And so what I'm frightened of, is if we go with the part and some of the other district is not part of that, there's going to be some alienation there. I think we've got, now maybe that's inevitable anyway, but I'm saying regardless of what we decide tonight, when we put a bonding issue together, it's a challenge, and I think it's going to be a huge challenge. Some of that's the remnant, whether we like it or not, from the closing of the schools, which has divided this community more so than probably any other issue. So there's that remnant. Is that forgotten? Is that buried? Will that go away? I don't know. That part we'll see. I think there's another issue, though, here too, and Sarah alluded to it, and that is, and I don't think the community design team picked up on that. There's got to be something in there significant for a greater group of this community. Like, for example, on Tuesday night, part of the package, and I realize it's not finalized, it's in its pieces. There was a proposal. I personally favor 2 smaller schools, flexible to expand, rather than one big school of 900 elementary kids that could expand. To me, that's not us, but that's how I represent. But the point is, each of those elementaries that was proposed would cost over $40 million. I think collectively, it came out to be like 80.3 million. If then additionally, you do what you propose to do on Brookview to expand that, and again, that's a sub-issue, a lot of that, if you start to add it, you come almost to where we were last time in 2015, when we came very close to $100 million. Now, for people in the northern part of district, and I know right now that population is not as large, boy, that's an issue. Just like I think it is an issue, and granted, it doesn't affect everybody, but to disregard Oak Park, as some feel, also is an issue. So Mark, I agree with you completely. I think what we need to look at, and that's what makes tonight's vote even more difficult, is we've been spending months on the division in the district. And we've been very little on, well, golly, what would it take for the Brookview people to embrace other people in the district? Well, that's my position.
So my question still stands. What's going to happen to those kids if we don't build on to it?
Denise?
So a couple of things that I think is important for the board and community. We've had some conversation about this already. All of us know that the southern part of our district is expanding, and by 2024, I think we're looking at about 1,800 kids at the elementary, or needing capacity for 1,800 kids. Expanding Brookview is part of a strategy. Whenever you look at school districts, you know, a long-term, and Cunningham Group had shared this, is you're looking at a 10-year plan. It doesn't happen all in 1 year. We know the kids are coming. I don't think anyone can refute that. Expanding Brookview is part of a strategy. You're hearing people tell you right now that it's not a good environment for learning. If your referendum passes in 2021, which hopefully it will be, we know that Lake Elmo and Woodbury are continually supportive of the school district no matter what. But if it passes, you still are out to 2023 before you have a place for your students to go. What's going to happen if we don't do it? We will have large-scale boundary changes. That's how we'll deal with it. And so we've shared many different scenarios with the board about what that might look like. The board ultimately will have the decision about what it looks like. We'll bring a boundary committee together and have them give you information on what that might look like. But I just want to remind the board that it's part of a strategy. All of us know it's not going to fix it. And last night at the community design team, when we were looking at the numbers, we probably really need 3 schools of about 600 unless you make Lake Elmo bigger. And 450 is not going to cut it. We can't have 4 or 3 schools of 450. It's still not going to be enough.
Yes.
I understand when you said we would all like to raise our hand and help. So I think we all would love to do that today if we could. But to me, helping just one and not helping everybody is what I have a hard time with. So I'm just going to read. I have something that I would like to read also. I served on the Long Range Facilities Planning Committee in 2014-15. This committee of administrators, teachers, and community members presented a recommendation to the board that included Brookview. It's important to remember Brookview was built at its current size because the committee was planning to grow the district using every existing school. The administration also had to justify to MDE how existing and new capacity would meet our projected enrollment. Our recommendation was the blueprint for the bond, and I voted for it enthusiastically. I was excited to add a new school to our district. I was excited that we were going to grow. Unfortunately, now we've put ourselves in a position where we can't grow. In our meeting on December 10th, the superintendent said some schools can't accept more kids because they're full. So I have a hard time that we are just finishing up with almost a $100 million bond. We're in a position that we can't grow. We should use the data administration has given us to make an objective decision. We also have to be considerate to all district voters. It is easy to spend other people's money. I don't believe it's appropriate to minimize an $8 tax increase, especially when we are planning to ask for more and more down the road. We have significant work to do to reestablish trust with the majority in our district. We should err on the side of asking instead of taking. One way to build that trust is to display fiscal responsibility and admit when we have made mistakes. If we can do that, we have a much better chance of getting support from our voters in the future. We must make decisions that put our students in the best position to succeed. We need to pay attention to the recent survey that showed the majority are not in favor of building a new school. Rather, they want us to more effectively use the buildings we have. In 2015, this is still on our website, the bold, which was called myth number 1. Many people, and this is a quote, I pulled this up today, so it's still available. Many people incorrectly assume that closing 3 schools would leave the remaining schools overcrowded. We do have overcrowding today. But at the time, this says, this is a misinterpretation that class sizes will increase and classrooms will be standing room only. The reality is that even closing Marine, Oak Park, and Withrow, we would have room in our remaining schools for more than 4,000 students, or as many as 5,000 students with programming changes. While we're projected to have 3,627 students in our elementary in 2017-18, that's a quote. This year, we have 3,522 K-5 students. This number can be found in the November 14th board packet. By 23-24, we're anticipating closer to 3,800 elementary students. Using these numbers, we have classroom space today for at least 500 elementary students. We must remember that Oak Park is sitting in the center of our district, underutilized. This building can accommodate around 400 students. Without building any new classrooms, the numbers tell us we have space for 900 elementary students today, 650 by 2023-24. And that doesn't even include Withrow sitting empty, which could serve about 200 more students. 4 years ago, administration made the argument to use the classroom space we have. Even said they did a capacity study. They wanted to balance class sizes across the district. Today, they say we're overcrowded, but we don't have capacity at the same time. How is this possible? Some don't like where our classroom space is located. Some are arguing it makes practical sense to spend millions of dollars on brand new classrooms at the same time we waste space for hundreds of students. How is this fiscally responsible? Let's use the space we have better. In my opinion, facilities have dominated our attention for far too long. Let's return our attention to our primary responsibility, academic progress and achievement.
So the last part, academic progress and achievement, just go a little bit off of what Director Burns was saying about the music departments. So I was actually talking to Griff Sato, who is the director of the theater department, I think in our whole entire district, about it, and they were going to do a production of Flint, Michigan, which is a play about the crisis in Flint, Michigan, which is predominantly Black characters. They weren't able to put it on because of lack of diverse people in the arts. And I feel like when we look at Brookview and how diverse it is, and us not even being able to support them in the arts, that's gonna have an extremely detrimental impact when they get to the high school and when they get to like Oakland, which is probably where they're gonna be going, that they are already at a disadvantage because they aren't able to play in the right settings with the right equipment. And so for us to continue to not fund that, it's just going to continue to set them back. And to put it in specific, like, these are people of color specifically that are going to be affected, especially since, again, Brookview is one of the most diverse schools in our district. And so, I don't know, I think that as a student perspective, seeing that future possible ponies are going to be put at the disadvantage of, I guess, like, everyone in the district and everyone in the state, just doesn't feel right to me.
Thank you. Kristen?
Thank you. I would like to address the fiscal responsibility a little bit. I can appreciate your words, and I have a bit of a different perspective. Anybody who's been watching the CDT has seen that the projection for, and I'm guessing at numbers, I wasn't there the entire meeting on Tuesday, to build a new elementary school, and I believe at 450 students was listed at about $40 million. Mm-hmm. We built Brookview for 25. Mm-hmm. So if we want to talk about inflation and decisions waiting, I think we have to acknowledge that the costs are increasing. So to me, there's some fiscal responsibility there as well to say, and you have to weigh it against voter versus non-voter, I understand that. But to say we all agree we need to do it, there is a cost to delaying the decision, and a true cost. Another statement that was made was when we decided to add an elementary school, if I recall, the election was that we were either going to buy an existing building that we were a part of or to replace it with a new school. I don't believe it was an ad. I believe it was either we were going to buy Valley Crossing or we were going to replace it. It wasn't a new school. Fiscal implications as well as administration recommendation. Administration has been recommending adding on to this building before it was even fully constructed. So I'd like to point that out as well. And one final note, as far as fiscal accountability, there is a very big difference between money that we put in to construct a building and money that we put in to operate a building. Because when you are talking about educating the students and getting to the focus of that, you need operational dollars. The money, yes, it's very much, it's on the taxpayer, buildings exist, that is real. The operational dollars are what keeps staff in front of kids, they keep books in their hands, and they keep us in the business of education. The more buildings you operate, the more it costs to operate, and that takes it out of the classroom.
Thank you. What I'd like board members to do is this. That's okay, go ahead. What I'd like to do is this. Again, I had a 2-hour target. We're not going to make that, and I'm okay with that. But I would like to move this question. I'll take a couple more questions. What I want you to think about, those of you who haven't spoken, or even those of you who have, to pick what hasn't been said. So at this point, so Liz, I'll give it to you, and then I'll give, she's had her hand up.
This is just quick, I'm sorry. I was just gonna remind that we just did a survey, the Morris Leatherman survey said only 17% or 17% would be in favor of constructing a new school, and I know that that's what the CDT is recommending. I don't know, did they have the information from that survey to know that that's not what people wanted to do? Renovation of older buildings said 41, and ensure comparable facilities 37, expand existing schools 36, but construction of a new school was not high on the list of things people wanted to do.
Thank you. Shelley?
Thank you, and I haven't said anything yet, so I apologize that it's a little
Jen has neither, so
lengthy.
she's next.
So just so everybody knows where my thoughts have gone through this. We've been talking about this for over a year, heard from various people who feel there's no question about the right recourse. Only we have people on both sides who are certain of the right recourse. I don't believe that is clear cut. I also believe that all of my fellow board members and the community members we have heard from have valid opinions. No matter how we vote, it's going to anger different people for different reasons. For me, the following are the clearest pros and cons. For pros, the addition could be completed earlier than after a bond passage to alleviate overcrowding sooner and minimize short-term boundary changes. Some feel that this is showing favoritism to one school, which I do understand. At the same time, with our own children, we meet different needs as they arise. It doesn't always mean everything is equal, but it does mean we do our best to meet all of their needs. As often as we can in our families, we plan ahead. Other times, something comes up that needs to be addressed more quickly, and we do. That is one of the pros here. The funding mechanism is available to us for reasons like this. It's not unlike what cities and counties have available to them as well. And we don't vote on all of those things. For example, we did not vote as taxpayers for the replacement of the dome at the rec center this year. It was something like this that the city had available to them. It does still result in a net decrease in school district taxes from this year to next. It alleviates stress of families who are nervous about overcrowding at Brookview. And it would lay to rest one issue that is keeping us from focusing on what we all want to be focusing on, which is new and exciting offerings for our students. For the cons, according to the Morris Leatherman survey, we are at a fragile place with our taxpayers, and this would take away their opportunity to weigh in. If we do this, it could tip the scales so that a bond and even a levy would not pass. We know it does not take a large vote no group to fail a bond and levy in our district. If a Brookview expansion is done by COP, we may lose supporters for the bond when we will need everyone on board to support it. It affirms the process for how things have been done, with which I do not agree. I disagree that it was brought to the former board late in the year last year. It was also brought to us in a rush in September, and process does matter. It can also send, if we vote against it, a message to our community design team members who have sacrificed many hours that we don't honor their work. I have concerns about the process, which I will address at a later time, but there are people who have given up time with their families and many hours to be part of developing a plan. The last thing I want is for them to think they wasted their time or that we don't value the individuals who are serving. I actually came in here tonight not knowing how I would vote on this. What I can say is that this hatred and anger that's happening in this district has to stop. The accusations that this board does not care about kids or is stuck on past decisions is just not true. Pitting different groups against the board can't help anybody. It's not the North versus the South. It's not people stuck in the past versus those who want to move forward. It certainly shouldn't be our SEA against the board, and it's not the board against the students. Someone's feeding a rhetoric that's not true, that's lasted for too long. One of our open forum speakers asked, why is it so important that we are seeking to destroy each other? To me, this is the bigger issue. I've agonized over this decision, and I do have a problem with the process. With reservation, I will vote for the expansion of Brookview, but with the caveat that I have significant concerns about the community design team process, as some have shared, and we really need to figure out how to go forward together as a community and as a board without so many assumptions being made about why we vote the way we do and what's important to each one of us, because I do truly believe that each one here wants what's best for our kids, and that is what is behind the votes that each one makes.
Jen?
My first thought tonight was to provide a list of all of the facts that have been communicated over the course of this year in support of Brookview. Facts that speak to the acute situation we have on our hands regarding the tremendous population boom in the South, the bursting of the current Brookview structure, and the impact that not expanding will have on our families at Lake Elmo Elementary, Anderson, and Afton Lakeland. But after seeing with my own eyes a regular day at Brookview, and upon walking into the outrageously inappropriate utilization of the non-room that is a makeshift preschool classroom, and now has this not passing, I guess we'll be dealing with that for 5 years, if not more. I have come to the sad conclusion that the facts don't seem to matter. If they did, we wouldn't be here in this situation. So instead, I'd like to summarize some opposing arguments that have been publicly stated over the year. Number one, it is too rushed and we don't have up-to-date demographic information. The construction isn't happening at the rate staff thinks it is. Insert teamwork study from 2018. Consistent communications from 2018 through today between staff and planners in the city of Lake Elmo, and more importantly in this circumstance, the city of Woodbury. Perhaps it doesn't matter. We need to bring the community along with us. We need a survey. Insert unanimous letter of support from the building leadership, hundreds, literally hundreds of emails in support of the expansion, a survey with results in support of it, and now the CDT. Perhaps that doesn't matter either. Number 3, the constant flip-flop argument, which sounds something like this. I won't support a non-voter approved levy. Actually, I would have supported it. I just wanted updated demographics. If I had that, I'd support it. Wait, now that I have that and it happens to support the expansion, I'll go back to my original comment and not support a non-voter approved levy. The emotional arguments, how can we do this to the parents of Marine, Withrow, and Oak Park? Yes, they are hurt, and I have said it many times. I empathize with these families. But I also empathize with the families of our other schools who have been underserved for decades. My grief is also consumed with the knowledge that this emotional plea is used as a catalyst for indecision and ineffective governance. Number 5, I like small schools. Brookview will now be too big. Well, don't we all? I want 15 kids in every classroom, to be honest with you. The truth of it is, it's the culture of the building that creates the environment. That culture is set by the building leader, and we have the best building leaders in the state of Minnesota. Number 6, we have Oak Park bought and paid for. Why do we need to do this? Well, I am personally still trying to find the $2 to $6 million every single year out of the general and capital funds to operate even just a K through 3rd. I have yet to be able to find those dollars. The worst one, in my opinion, the families in the Brookview attendance area won't pass a referendum if they get this passed now. This, to me, is the most political and frankly arrogant and offensive argument. In putting myself in the shoes of a new family at that school, and if my board made the commitment to my family and my school such as this with a $400,000 increase, $13 a year, you know what I'd do? I'd become a member of the campaign to pass the next referendum. We shouldn't be worrying about that. We should be worrying about what's going to happen with this decision. I'd fight for my district in the same manner my board fought for me. Loyalty goes both ways. We have reversed decisions, delayed decisions, changed our mind according to whichever way the wind is blowing. We have desperately tried to poke holes in every single outcome that didn't go our way. The latest, of course, is the CDT. And for what? Please remember that if Brookview wouldn't have been reversed in the first place, insert any one of the excuses I stated previously, we would not have even had to deal with this crisis right now. The CDT could have been more focused on creative learning spaces and the other facilities. That was my hope. In that absence of any sound reason, which we have yet to see one, we're left with one last reason why. Is it revenge? Is it retribution? I don't know what it is. I really don't know. Facts don't lie. Demographics don't lie. That's the beauty, of course, of mathematics. We may be having a situation right now with a bit of a lopsided representation on this board, which these seats that we rent offer quite a bit of temporary control. But like-minded thought that seems to use that power toward a specific goal that serves a small segment of the population most certainly will never, ever win the hearts of the majority of this community. I'm done.
Principal Drummerhausen is asked if he could speak. Mark?
Good evening.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. Couple things. I mean, I look at this kind of through 3 ways. First one is there's been a lot of talk here from our speakers and from the people here about our spaces for all of our kids. And, you know, we look at our preschool, we look at our art room, and from a principal's perspective is looking to have adequate space or just a classroom space for our preschool. Our preschool does not want to leave our school. They will take the space they have in hopes that soon they can have a regular classroom to be there. They don't want to have their preschool go to a spot that's off-site in a different location, whether it's the church across the street or it's somewhere else. They want to be in our building and build that community and build that transition for our preschool kids as they enter kindergarten, as they enter first grade. We've talked a lot, coming into the bond of putting preschool in all of our buildings, and then now, since preschool has been in all our buildings, about the retention rate of preschoolers who stay with us. And I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it's in the 80-some% of preschoolers who come with us, stay with us. And the impact and just the comments that I get just from myself, from our preschool families, about how much they appreciate our preschool and how they can't look forward to the transition of how their students already know where it comes. So from a building principal, we talk about only adding, 75 more students, or adding 125 with those classrooms, but I also look at those 3 rooms of putting things back, whether it's art and the 2 preschool, is very valuable in my perspective. Not only adding the adequate spaces, I also look at our enrollment and where we are from a enrollment standpoint from our primary to our intermediate students. Our primary students, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, have significantly more students in each grade level than our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So our K1, 2s are in the 80s and 90s for number of kids in the grade levels. Our 3rd, 4th, and 5th currently are in the 60s and 70s. So as those smaller cohorts leave our system, and as those bigger cohorts move up into 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, and then as we look in right now, it was a month ago or a month and a half ago, when we looked at incoming pre-K numbers, and we looked at that time was like 90s, low 90s, mid 90s, I think it was 92 or 95. We pulled that number again this week, and it's already up over 100. It's at 100 right now. So we've actually gained some of our kindergarten students. Now, we recognize that all those kindergarten students are gonna come. Some will be held back, some will be going to different choices, but the number of students that we're getting in our building is growing. And as those kids get older in the grade levels, is not having the classrooms for them. And so the third thing is not only with the enrollment as those younger students move up the grade levels, but it's also looking every day at recess. And in the backyard of our playground is a housing development that's going up. And right now they're just kind of grading and they're just getting it set, but starting in the spring, they're gonna start building townhomes and homes and those sorts of things. So our numbers are increasing before even those housing developments have even started. So those are just the things that I look at from my perspective that I just want you to consider as we make the vote here tonight.
Thank you. Any other board members that wish to speak? Mark?
I know I've spoken several times, and I'll be very, very brief. Director Weisberg, I can hear the anger in your voice, and I understand that there's anger in the community from years past. I'll tell you my number one reason why I believe that the expansion of Brookview is appropriate, necessary, we need it now, is to minimize that same pain. We don't want to say no to those kids. You can't go to that school. We have to go somewhere else. That's why I don't want to repeat that.
Okay, thank you. Lizzie?
I didn't know that I sounded angry. I was just reading facts that we've gotten from the district, which I have a hard time reconciling. If in December of 2015, we were told that we can close 3 schools because we have a space for as much as 5,000. With programming changes, it says up to 4,000. Where could those people be now?
Well, so let's do the best we can right now.
I understand,
let's
but
do the best we
we're-
can right now.
I'd like to do the best for everybody. I'd like
Me
to do the
too.
best for everybody.
Me
And so it's not that people are against expansion. It's, we want to do something for everybody, period.
Tina?
So when we had Peter Leatherman came out and reviewed that survey with us, I thought you asked him specifically about having something on the ballot for everybody, and he said absolutely, in reference to the Brookview expansion. So just going by the recommendations of how we could possibly win a bond or levy campaign, I really feel that it's in the best interest of the entire community to have everybody participate that way.
Anyone else? Sarah?
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate what I remember Peter Leatherman saying was that the bonds pass by a sliver and they fail by a log. They fail by huge amounts because people reject them for some reason. And if we are not respectful to our entire community, our entire voting community, I'm afraid that might happen. I mean, I think we all agree that Lake Elmo is as much of a concern, if not more of a concern, than Brookview. And we talk about all the new development that's coming in Brookview, but there are already over 2,000 homes that have just been built in the last 3 years in Lake Elmo, and yet somehow we don't talk about that. They're already seeing that growth in Lake Elmo right now. It's not coming, it's here now. And yet we hardly talk about it. And so I just don't understand the urgency for Brookview when there is clearly a need in both Lake Elmo and in Anderson. And I mean, I want to answer the question that you asked, which is a great question. If we don't add on to Brookview, what do we do? And I think there's been a perception that if we don't do this, it's going to be boundary changes. But I think it's pretty clear at this point, no matter what we do, with the addition or not, there's going to be boundary changes, because anytime you have this kind of growth in your community, you're going to have boundary changes, and you may have multiple boundary changes because the growth is coming that fast, right? And we're lucky because some communities in this state have the opposite problem, and they have to do those boundary changes because they're losing people that fast. This is something that we should be thankful for. Our community is thriving and growing, and it's an awesome place to live, and it's a great time to live here. And these are all good things. We should not be tearing each other apart over these issues. We should be coming together with all the different ideas we can possibly think of and put them all on the table and embrace them all and see which one makes the most sense. And that is exactly what I was trying to do when just about a month ago I proposed the idea of turning this building into a Spanish immersion space that would be an expansion of the immersion program that we already have in place. It would be we would not need to do boundaries because it would be a choice school. If people want to come here I mean, I didn't have all the details laid out, but I thought it was a good idea. It could alleviate the crowding in multiple buildings, not just one building, and we could do it quickly. That's why I proposed it. And I got lambasted by board members, by community members, by teachers. I think that was really unfair because you know what? It's not a bad idea.
No.
It's just not, okay? And so there's the answer is, we can think of some things that we can do. There's not just one thing to do. There's multiple things to do. And if we embrace this and appreciate it for the opportunity that we have, I think that we will be able to come together as a community and find good ideas that will work.
I'm going to take a list next. She's at
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I guess just what I wanted to say was, yes, there's multiple things that need to be done with this district, like Lake Elmo, and those are bridges we'll have to cross when we get there. But I guess my question is, what can we do tonight that will help the most people?
Thank you.
I just want to say, that's a great comment, honey, by the way. I just want to say, I think, Director Stivlin, I'm with you in, and I think the first speaker, I empathize with her concerns over the CDT because I was hoping, again, not a topic for another day, but I was hoping that maybe we could address the CDT, or excuse me, Oak Park, and maybe we are. Maybe the CDT is still doing that. I don't know. And look at all these different options. But you know what the problem is in the messaging and the optics. And when the community hears the board chair at the CDT meeting say that you raise that as a tit for tat because you were mad at Brookview.
I did not do that.
That was a live comment that was made. I was sitting there.
Do not put that on me. That was not my comment.
I'm just saying that's why you might have gotten some heat because
it is unfortunate that
I can imagine. And secondly, with regards to the taxes, we are elected, the legislature gives us a funding mechanism such as a lease levy in order to do projects such as this. If we don't, public education is under consistent and constant funding stress. If we don't take advantages of opportunities like this, we've got people with $100 property tax decreases $400,000, $13 a year. We have 8 classrooms to alleviate the pressure at this school. No one has ever said, why are we ignoring Lake Elmo? And I think Lake Elmo knows that. I haven't heard it once. I think maybe, we should.
I think what we're going to do is.
I'm going to finish. We should then disband the school board altogether and have everything go to the voters 100% if we can't make these decisions.
We have a motion.
Can I just say one?
No, I think we're going to move on. We're going to move on. We have a motion. Sherry, do you have the motion there, please?
$38,246,648.07, and it was seconded by member Weisberg.
Okay, and just for clarification, so this is known, if this motion passes, the Brookview expansion would not take place immediately. Okay, does everybody understand? Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, the motion has been made and seconded. All of those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 4-3. Moving on to the next item is the 2019-2020 revised budget.
Thank you again, Board Chair Potacek. You have an official bound copy of the 2020 revised budget. We had this in report form at our December 12th meeting. Within the contents of the budget, you should have a paperclip one-page copy that addresses.
Go ahead.
It's hard to hear. I can wait. I mean,
I can hear you.
I'm trying to focus, but it's,
okay.
sorry.
The 1920 revised budget, the one page is the snapshot that might help when Shelley had asked the question about, what is the difference between kind of the revenue and the expenditure, and we were looking at it in its entirety. This actually breaks it out. You've seen this page before that says, okay, here's our total overall general fund budget, and then we take out our reserved categories, which then gives us to the adjusted revenue and the adjusted expenditures. And then ultimately how that adds to our fund balance, and you can see the difference. I did receive this afternoon a list of questions from a board member. I can try to address that list. I didn't have a time to prepare much, but I was looking through it earlier as we were waiting for the meeting to begin, so it is entirely up to the chair or the member that had sent me those questions if they'd like me to try to address them now. Otherwise, I can try to address them via email
That's fine.
later. Okay.
Let's do that. In the interest of time.
Okay.
Okay, and I think most of those who are on the board, a lot of people have seen that we've raised questions prior to this. This is not the first time we've seen it. I do thank you for your willingness to, answer those questions. But again, I think what Sarah's saying is not the immediacy. It's not something you have to do right now. Are there any other questions, comments on the proposed budget?
Well, if I could just ask that, I was actually surprised to see, because I didn't see this document until I actually picked up the form. I thought that our long-term facilities maintenance budget was like closer to 6 million, and I was surprised to see that under the expenditures, it's 8. So were there changes there, or can you just speak to that?
No, absolutely. So what ends up happening, and we have this conversation a lot because it's a fluctuating number, but it's not. So the $6 million that Director Burns had referenced in this levy, remember, that's for next year. The revenue that we're collecting under long-term facility maintenance is last year's number that we levied. Okay, so that's the 5.5. Where you get the swing in expenditures is the timing of the projects. So if a project wasn't started or completed by June 30th, it rolls into the next year. So it looks like, oh my goodness, you're overspending by $3 million.
Yeah.
You're really not. It means our audit came in significantly under, and it's just this pendulum of when we're doing the project. At the end of the day, we balance out, and if we don't, the levy reflects that.
Right.
But that's why.
So I guess this is kind of a rhetorical question, open-ended, and we can talk about it later. And I kind of mentioned it, I think, in one of my questions that I sent you, would there be some way for us to kind of get an ongoing update of where those are at, just so that when we see a number like that, it isn't so much a surprise, like, oh, I know what that's about, you know?
Yeah, I can try. We refresh that list as we're doing the levy every year, and then it's kind of, this is what's teed up for next year's projects. If it's, as we work our way through, because you see on, as we work our way through the expenditure form and the disbursements, like this is long-term facilities where you can check off projects, but again, there's not necessarily, okay, you approve this list, we've completed half of it midway through the year, whatever. I mean, that is easy enough to be able to do that.
I just think for two reasons. One, I just like to keep it kind of running total in my head. And also to be able to have it in my head, I can talk to people like, yeah, that building has a new roof.
Yes.
Or we're gonna pave the parking lot, and it's just nice to kind of.
Can give us, because the summer projects are our big ones, and you
Yeah.
see that list, but we can certainly do like a mid-year, maybe at this time, as
Yeah,
I'm coming
that
in,
would be
doing the
great.
budget every year.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So we need it.
Yeah, I was just going to make a motion to approve the 2019-2020 revised budget. Is that what it is?
Liz, I saw your hand before I heard Tina speak, so I'll go with the second by Liz. Any other questions, discussion? Sarah?
One more.
You're going to sneak
Sorry.
all those questions back in.
No, I'm not. No, I promise I won't. I just wanted to reiterate that it seems to me that because we have negotiations going on, there's a decent chance we're going to see an updated revised budget at some point in the spring.
It is possible.
Because we don't always get that, but we probably will this year.
When we have large,
Big swings.
big
changes,
swings,
yeah.
big changes, yes, this year you certainly have a better shot of seeing an update.
I have that to look forward to.
Okay, thank you.
Just a
Jen.
quick thanks, Chair. To that point, I want to do the plug for when we might have the discussions about some of these items that we have cut from our previous budget. And, the one at top of mind for me is, right at the moment, is the custodians. I know that, especially in the middle schools and the elementary schools, it's really, really bad. I apologize. Middle schools and the high school. That's where I heard the situation is pretty acute. So I just want to put the plug there that I'm going to keep driving. I want to have those discussions. Thank you.
Any others? All those in favor of the motion as proposed, this table's loose, signify by saying aye, please, and raise your right hand.
Aye.
Aye. It passes unanimously. Moving on, and it looks like Kathy Moen is making her way. Good evening.
Good evening. In keeping in your timelines, I've kept my comments short. Good evening, Chair Potacek, Superintendent Pontrelli, and members of the board. As a district, we have 9 contracts that are approved by the board on a 2-year cycle. 7 of those contracts expired on June 30, 2019. This evening, I am pleased to present the master contract with the Cafeteria Employees Organization, which is the first of the 7 to come for your approval. With your approval, the proposed changes will become effective retroactively to July 1, 2019. The Cafeteria Employees Organization represents approximately 72 employees holding positions as cooks and cook managers. On November 26, 2019, representatives of the district and the CEO reached tentative agreement on the terms of the 2019-21 master contract. This group empowers their negotiating team to settle the agreement, so no vote is necessary on the cafeteria's part. The key elements of the agreement include changes to language related to union dues, changes to language regarding certification requirements, and then changes to the emergency closing language, providing payment for the first 2 days of closure with opportunities to make up lost days for a future day, for other additional days. Additionally, in accordance with the board parameters, the contribution toward health insurance was adjusted to provide an 85% paid, district paid, and a 15% employee paid premium for family coverage, and single remains fully paid. The district's contribution towards dental insurance was increased to maintain fully paid dental insurance. And as it relates to the salary schedule, there was no increase to the salary schedule year 1, and a 1% increase was made to the salary schedule year 2. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, administration recommends approval of the updated cafeteria employee organizations master contract.
Thank you. Let's see if there's a couple questions, and then we'll go for a motion, okay? Any questions?
I was going to move.
All right, go ahead and move.
I'd like to move that we accept the cafeteria employee master contract for 2019 through 2021.
Jen raised her hand. You got to be quick at these things now. Jen, I'll take it as a second. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your right hand, please.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. We have one more
Thank you,
item,
Kathy.
and that is Pathways Coordinator, Dr. McDowell.
All right, Chair Tasik, School Board, Superintendent Pontrelli. Principal Bach and I are here tonight to talk about an opportunity we have to put in place a career pathways coordinator for the second half of the school year. I'm going to quickly go through just a little slideshow only because it brings us back full circle to what was presented with to the board back in August. And so tonight what we're talking about really is getting to really what was the vision for the Pathways program as it stands at this point in time.
Dr. McDowell, can you speak into the mic? I think
sorry.
maybe. Thank you.
Thanks for the reminder. Forget about that when we're here. What was presented back in August with Principal Bach and the team was really this vision for Pathways, which really gets at how can we support academic achievement and provide opportunities for all students? How do we design this framework that aligns our curriculum offerings? And then really the meat and potatoes of what we're shooting for long-term is creating these flexible pathways, one in business, one in arts and communication, STEM and the environment, health sciences, and human services. And to get there, you'll remember that the team at the high school, under the direction of Principal Bach and his administrative team, has really used this design thinking process to take really over 12 months of time to find out what's important to students, to staff, to the community, understand what direction they should go through in order to define really what should this pathways look like and get to the point where we can ideate or come up with ways that we might prototype smaller things along the way, but really start to begin the process of focusing on professional development, how we want to offer credits, how do we want to partner with both post-secondary institutions as well as community organizations. And that led the team to the next steps, which really is all about building that relevancy for staff, engaging in community partnerships, and focusing on what's the next step towards that academic achievement for high school students, whatever that might be. And so where we've reached a point is that team has really gotten to the point where we're in need of someone who can focus their time and energies during a day on really two major pieces. One is taking the lead on the Career Pathways program, and the second is really continuing this momentum that this group has come to start building and work with staff on curriculum, and then work with our local businesses and organizations to start coordinating what's going to become the experiences even outside of the high school experience. And with that, I'll turn it over to Principal Bach, because I know he has got a couple things just maybe to add to those last two pieces.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. McDowell. I'll summarize what Dr. McDowell just talked about. I really envision the work of this particular person tackling two fronts right now, one of which is the curricular side of things. We know right now that there's course revisions that are going to need to be made, possibly even course additions to make sure that each of the programs of studies that we want to offer kids is robust and really offers all of the opportunities that they should have. So that requires someone with a curricular knowledge of where we are as a school school and some of the conversations that have taken place, and also where we need to go with the pathways. The other piece, as Dr. McDowell indicated, is continuing to refine the partnerships with the community. We know that our community is looking for reasons to partner with us. They want it. They recognize that we are really the ones who are responsible for providing them with their workforce, and they're interested in partnering with us. This is absolutely a golden opportunity for us, where we've finally stretched out our arms and said, you know what, we are ready to work with you to figure out ways to get our kids involved in this. So like I said, it's really those two fronts. And I had kind of a unique opportunity. A friend of mine, a former principal associate, who now does pathways work in a tri-district area. He's kind of a coordinator for smaller schools, invited me to a meeting, which I really wasn't too sure exactly what the meeting was, but I thought it'd be a good networking opportunity. Let's hear what's going on in some of these other places. And when I went, I sat down and met with all kinds of people on our side of town who are essentially sitting in a position very similar to this. And when I think about the work that our team has done, I've been very, very proud of the organic nature. This is something that we took on internally, where we were real introspective to say, who are we as a school and what do we need to continue to do? And this is the concept that we came up with. And philosophically, I feel very confident that the pieces that we're talking about put us ahead of the curve. And as I've told you before, I think the potential for a program like this in Stillwater far exceeds anything that a number of other communities could offer. And so from that standpoint, I feel very, very good that we're still ahead of the curve. But when I look at logistically what all kinds of other schools and districts, including ones that are very, very close to us, are doing, they've already got this in place. And I walked out of that meeting feeling like, holy cow, we've got to get this going. And as I said to you, this is just simply not sustainable with the model that we've used to get to the point where we are right now. We need a point person. We need someone to champion that particular effort. The only other piece that I'd throw out, if anyone is kind of wondering why now, is there a greater sense of urgency now? I would argue that yes, the urgency is for right now for a couple of different reasons. Number one, I mentioned some of the curricular work that needs to take place. Typically, any changes to curriculum are made and approved by the Curriculum Advisory Council, and those changes typically go through in the very beginning of a school year. So September, October, those proposals need to go forward so that whatever work can get done to get it into a registration guide by November, December, and students can start ruminating on it by January. All of that stuff goes back, and that does not leave teachers an awful lot of time if we hit them up at the beginning of a school year to say, hey, we need you to start thinking about how you might revise some things or do some things to help beef up the pathways. So that work really needs to start now, which means that someone who's closely connected to our school and our building and familiar with our curriculum needs to be involved in that. What that means, if you kind of work backwards from that, is that if that winds up being a teacher, like a teacher on special assignment, that's a position that we're going to have to backfill. And it makes sense, obviously, to do that at a semester time where there's a natural transition, and that time is coming up in the middle to late January. We have continued to have conversations with other entities about the possibilities of supporting this particular program. But we also know that if this is going to happen, we've got to get something posted now so that we can figure out what the succession plan would be if a teacher needs to come out of the classroom to help coordinate.
Yeah, question I have is this, and I support this. I think this is pretty important. I've seen it in practice, even more ambitious. Tell me this, where is this going to fit organizational-wise? Is this someone that you would supervise, they report to you, or is it planned to be organization-wise someplace else?
It's a great question. I think at least initially what we've been talking about is posting it as a teacher on special assignment. So in that context, I would view it as, yes, it's someone who's probably likely going to report to me, but the reality is they're going to be somewhat independent, right? They're going to be given a charge to take a program, build this. Obviously, I'd be meeting regularly with this person. We'd be reporting out regularly to try to make sure we're on the same page.
One other just suggestion to consider, because I've been in areas that do this already, is they say what you want to do in the academics is put more career vocational. What you want to do in the vocation is put more rigor in there as well. So for what it's worth, and it may not be worth much, keep that in mind. Shelley?
No,
or
me?
Tina?
I am all on with this. I mean, this is totally my area of love here, but I guess my question is, looking further out and going back to the meetings we've already had, knowing we're gonna have to adjust the schedule or the class hours in the day for the high school. From my understanding, we are utilizing classes that we currently have. We've just realigned them to kind of fit a pathway right now. I guess I'm wondering why we aren't waiting until negotiations are done to know how much money we have to work with in the budget, to know if we can utilize that to maybe change the period day, and just so we don't start something that we can't keep having the momentum to move through, I guess. So I'm kind of way out here. So that's where I'm at. I'm very conflicted.
Yep, and I think that's a very natural spot to be, but it's also one of those spots where I think we find ourselves in quite a bit, because on the one hand, we're waiting for something to happen, but on the other hand, we don't want to lose the momentum that we've got at the scale that we have it right now. And so that's what I would come back to, why we have an opportunity right now to do this in the context that community education currently has dollars set aside for this type of work that can support the initial placement of this position. In addition to that, the partnership plan has expressed interest in supporting this programming as it moves forward and can help with some of that. And so from our perspective, it's kind of a ratcheting in terms of, while the goal might be for us to get, in this case, beyond negotiations and figure out exactly what can it look like at a larger scale, we don't want to lose the momentum we have now, and we at least want to be ready to go if and when that takes place, to grow it even bigger. But for right now, since we have the ability to utilize community education dollars for this particular position, it seems to make sense to kind of take that risk at this point in time.
Okay, so can I just follow up
Sure.
with that? So if, per se, we have nothing really left after negotiations, and we don't have any money to work with hypothetically, and we are currently just utilizing courses that we have, what does this position do? How do they fit any more into the inability to add to our schedule?
That's a great question. Certainly, I'll go on the record as saying that we've had conversation as a team and agree with the idea that a different schedule would absolutely help to maximize the benefits of what we're talking about in the program. So knowing that, yes, other schedules would be better. With that said, we've also understood the idea that that's a ways off. And a 6x2 schedule, while it's not optimum to run this kind of program, we believe that even in the absence of anything related to schedule, if we nail pathways, we will still offer a better concept and a better package for our students. That can't happen, though, in all likelihood, without someone to marshal that. Part of what we've talked about is the idea that in Stillwater, we don't always lack for opportunities, but sometimes, especially with the target audience that we've talked about with this particular program, those opportunities have been so scattershot, it's just not in a streamlined way. And so a lot of times kids are missing out on those opportunities because it hasn't been presented in a clear and coherent way. What's needed to be able to do that in a comprehensive way is someone who pays attention to exactly this and specifically this to make sure that our kids have the exposure to it. So even if the schedule didn't change, I still believe that kids would have a better awareness of what those opportunities are. We'd have more established partnerships with people who want to partner with us and ways to get kids connected with those kinds of things.
In my mind, I liken it to the bar program, where we have, I mean, it's totally different, but we have Katie Papungatoa, who's able to be kind of the center point person to help things flow back and forth and really navigate what things need to happen and when they need to happen.
So in essence, what you're really doing is operationalizing what you shared with us at the workshop. I mean,
Absolutely,
that's kind
that's
of the
correct.
goal. Mark?
Thank you. So just to follow up, Rob, on what you had said, even within our 6x2 schedule, I think there are opportunities that there can be curriculum modifications. I know that there are other districts in the metro that are limited by a 6x2 schedule. But they've done work to try to develop maybe some hybridized classes that actually can have a focus on more than one particular subject, but yet get credit for those areas. So I think that what my hope is of this position is that they can look at the different opportunities that are out there, both within our current framework and potentially if things are able to change with the different schedule, and bring those proposals, those different thoughts back to the board so that we can consider them when we're talking about a levy. Does that play into our future plans? Whether or not we ultimately decide that we can actually change our schedule, I think there even are opportunities within our existing schedule to have some very innovative programming. That'd be my hope with this position.
I agree. And then I know that I brought this up at our working session, and I know that this wouldn't add to the responsibilities of this position, but perhaps the person with their sole job of concentrating just on this program and what would need to happen, maybe that person could bring forward, it would be better if we had a different schedule system. And maybe that could help snowball something else that we also think we need to use. From what I understand, the teachers that have brought it so far have done that in addition to their already large responsibilities at the high school. So having somebody whose focus was just this, I think would help us just advance the program quicker.
Yeah, and this is a cost of $53,000 for the second semester with the hope that it would be sustained in the future.
That's correct.
Is that right?
Correct. And
Sir?
Go ahead, sorry.
All right.
Go ahead.
No, and I was just going to say, again, just to reemphasize the idea that as we've looked at this work, it's kind of on two separate fronts. And so, my hope as we continue to talk about scheduling options, levy options, all of these things, if this is something that is really we're able to tap into very, very well, again, I see the potential for continued positions even where if you can have a curriculum specialist, a community partnership specialist, really to get this to where we'd want it to be. Those are all things that I potentially see playing itself out as we go forward. And yes, we'd always be looking for ways to keep that sustainable. Right now, primarily that'd be coming out of a general staffing model. And so if there were other models that we could look at where we work with the board to recognize the positions that we have that are going to be necessary positions, I think this would be one of those necessary positions.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So-
I just want to say I'm super, super excited about the possibilities that I'm so glad that we're starting this journey. I'm really excited about where it could go. I see lots of different possibilities. It's very, very exciting. I feel like one of the reasons, and I'm really glad you emphasized this when you spoke, that our community, this is gonna be great in our community because I feel like we have a really, really intelligent, vibrant, creative group of people in our community that are passionate about education, and there are lots and lots of individuals and companies that really want to be a part of our school system and really connect it to the real world. And I don't know, I just really am excited to see all those different processes. You have a list of potential partners in there. I think the list is actually a lot longer than just the ones on this page, right? And that's just gonna be fun to have a person who's gonna help us be able to develop that. And I just think the other thing too is that for too long, we in education, all of us collectively, have put such an emphasis on everyone has to go to college, which is perfectly wonderful and great. College is a great path, but it's not for everybody. And I think to have someone in this position who can really develop an alternative way of looking at their future that's viable and interesting and engaging and motivating, I think that's fantastic.
Okay, so we're going to take one more question, and then I'm going to ask for a motion.
All right, thanks, Chair. I'm very excited about this, and I think it was maybe one of our top goal or second goal for the board. So this is exciting stuff. I guess my one question that I will be consistent in is sustainability. I just want to ensure that this is embarking upon an incredibly exciting opportunity for all of us. This is, agree with Sarah, this is something we can all be excited about. So I just, however way you work that out, sustainability is really important. And my question was, and then I can make a motion, but,
I'll be back.
okay, we're good. All right.
Campaign trail.
All right. Well, with that, I would like to move that we approve the career pathways position as presented.
Second?
I'll second.
Shelley, second. I think we'll take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your right hand, please.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, and we are adjourned. And we're only 45 minutes later than I had hoped for.
Not bad.
Yes, it is. No, we had to do it.
We're making progress, baby steps.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.